Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, thank you, Julia. Welcome to the home of common sense. So much to get through. Naturally, why would we not talk about cabinet ministers urging Keir Starmer to sack his chief of staff? It's a fella called Morgan McSweeney. That's a Dickens character, surely? Apparently not. This is after a hostile number 10 briefing about Wes Streeting. Briefs allege a plot to oust Starmer, but Streeting has denied it, saying he's staying loyal to the Prime Minister. You believe that, you believe anything. Also this afternoon, a safeguarding review into the death of a 10-year-old girl, Sarah Sharif, has found neighbours feared being branded racist if they raised concern. It also reveals a council worker went to the wrong address 2 days before she died, and that custody was granted to her father in 2019 despite previous abuse allegations. I mean, you say heads should roll in these kind of stories. They very rarely do. This was horrific, and we'll bring you more details as to what might happen next. And a British medical journal analysis has warned against young people vaping, with teenagers being uniquely vulnerable to nicotine affecting their attention, memory, mood and school performance. It seems the governments have been asleep at the wheel, dazzled by industry spin about vaping helping adults quit cigarettes, while at the same time simultaneously encouraging youngsters to take up nicotine. Yeah, good move, guys. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news we'll bring you right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Welcome to the home of common sense. Let me just ask you this. Who would replace Keir Starmer? I mean, right now, I can't overstate this, and I don't base this, and neither do any of us here, working in a international newsroom where you are, you know, certainly double-sourced and triple-sourced and contacts are plenty all over the place. I can tell you now, as a matter of fact, Downing Street is in chaos, and the Prime Minister simply doesn't know which way to turn. This isn't the night of the long knives. This is almost a year of self-inflicted annihilation. From broken policies to senior cabinet sackings, manifesto pledges thrown in the bin, and a welfare system that's about to explode. Also an economy in the swamp. You saw those figures today. Growth in the UK economy slowing to 0.1%. That's kind of almost as bad as it can possibly be. This is between July and September. This is well under Labour's umbrella. You can't blame the previous government for this kind of stuff. Nothing is going right for Starmer, and the government are stuck in that well-trodden cul-de-sac. Blinkers, no idea what to do. Panic is setting in. What we do know is that cabinet ministers have demanded the sacking of Keir Starmer's chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, as the Labour Party has been plunged into this kind of civil war. This is all about briefings against Wes Streeting, the health secretary, and McSweeney, the most senior aide, faces calls for dismissal from the top of government after briefing from number 10 accused Streeting of plotting to remove Starmer from office. I tell you what I think happened here. I think it was fairly straightforward stuff, in that it's not new news that if there were a leadership election in the Labour Party, Streeting's name would be on the ticket and he'd probably get the gig. I know there's some curious tangents on the spectrum of Labour support, from the Corbynites over there, the Blairites over there, and all manner of characters in the middle. But broadly speaking, the smart money would be on Streeting. And I reckon this character McSweeney, who probably has no real experience in this world, and to be fair, until you get such a job, who does? But I think he's jumped the gun and thought, we're going to ward this off before it can get any further down the line. Now, of course, the problem with this is that it's now created a story that wasn't there before. So McSweeney is literally the architect here, potentially of his own downfall, and maybe even the downfall of the government, because allies of Keir Starmer are warning that Labour plotters could trigger a general election if they oust Keir Starmer, because nothing's going to get better for Labour. Nothing's going to get better. This was the party that had no honeymoon period. This was a party that was rudderless. This is a Prime Minister with no real ideological idea, a kind of grifter, if you like, in the world of politics, who felt, well, I was the head of the DPP, I became an MP, I'm a bright guy, I'm clever, I can argue a case, so therefore what could go wrong? I tell you what could go wrong, Keir Starmer, is you don't stand for anything, mate. You're not, there's no sort of solid ideological thing that you could attach to Keir Starmer, at least with Blair back in the day. You could say, OK, don't like the guy, but he stands for this. Thatcher stood for that. You have to sort of know what you stand for and be robust about it. Starmer never had that. He was never a good choice as leader of the Labour Party, other than there were some people who thought he was a little bit blairy. And that's kind of it. And he's not even that blairy, frankly. But there is a genuine question here. Who should replace him? Because here's the problem. If it triggered a general election, bring it on. But in likelihood, the greatest thing that's going to be triggered is a leadership election, not a general election. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Who would replace Keir Starmer if he were to get the tin tack from the top job, if there was a leadership challenge in Labour? And that's a fairly tricky mechanism because of the way their party, their inner workings are. But if it happened, who would it be? Who would you have? And what are your thoughts on the general question in terms of a general election? And this, some are suggesting, if it was that bad, this isn't like wait until May when we have the locals and Wales and Scotland and all of those mayorals and everything taking place. This is like potentially before then. I mean, could we really have a general election before May? Maybe we'll get one on Christmas Eve, who knows? 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Let's get a word from Peter Barnes, political strategist, who joins us to chat over the big stories of the day. Good afternoon to you, Peter.
Hi, Ian. How's it going? Nice to see you again.
It's all right. Yeah, not bad at all, thanks. Well, let's start with this story because, of course, it's dominating everything at the moment. Keir Starmer, ministers urging Keir Starmer to sack his chief of staff over these briefings that we were just talking about. Starmer is keeping his faith, apparently, in this McSweeney character. Environment Secretary Ed Miliband was speaking this morning on this, doing the rounds. He chatted to our station next door, Times Radio, about this very issue. Let's have a listen to what the Environment Secretary had to say.
I think it's been an unfortunate 2 days, to put it mildly. But, these briefings happen. They're bad. I'm sure Keir's absolutely furious about it. And I tell you, though, the thing that sustains you in politics through these turbulence, and I have been around a long time, and I remember the Blair Brown briefings, which were actually far worse than this. And what sustains you through this turbulence is mission. Having a sense of mission, having a sense of values, knowing where you're going. And that's what this... And my advice to my colleagues is stop looking inwards.
Stop looking inwards. Having a sense of values, Peter Barnes. What are those values?
Well, this is the thing. I think I've just agreed with Ed Miliband because he's 100% correct. But the Labour Party doesn't have any of the things that he's saying that they need, which is, like you said, values and mission, because they don't have anything. And this is why everything seems to be falling apart at the seams. Well, falling apart, really, because they got elected on the promise of change. Yeah. But change is not the destination. Change is how you get there. And unfortunately, they never really told us where we were going until they really got into power. And then they realized that they had even less of a clue then. What I find most interesting about this, the whole kind of Westminster drama, because this is kind of my bread and butter, I have to admit, I'm like, past the popcorn. But what I will say is, people used to say that Boris Johnson's number 10 was pandemonium and a circus and all of that. This situation makes Boris Johnson look like the smoothest prime minister ever. Like there's no scandal, no nothing. I think this actually might be worse than Partygate in a political sense, because what it's really highlighted is yet again the power of aides, the power of the unelected within, our democratic institutions. Because Morgan McSweeney is a very powerful man, and nobody put him there. Nobody said, all right, you could be the prime minister's number one guy. And it's quite concerning, really, the amount of power that he wields, because for me, I was listening to your opening monologue there, and I do agree with you. But my inner Westminster animal is saying to me, Morgan McSweeney did this deliberately to bolster Keir Starmer as the only option. Because if you think about it, what have we been talking about? Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, you know, the nonsense of this deputy leadership contest that never seems to end. And, you know, they don't really have anybody else. And I think that was Morgan's plan, that realistically, he's trying to make the base of the Labour Party, which are fleeing to the Greens like you've never seen, you know, to make them stay put, because Keir's the best they're going to get. You know, he's doing the whole, you know, the grass isn't always greener line. And unfortunately, with the Green Party, it might just be a little bit greener, but you never know. But I have to admit, this has been very entertaining, but it is at the cost of real debate over real issues. The economy has melted away. We don't have one anymore, realistically. And, you know, we've got geopolitical crisis, we've got a crime crisis, the migrant crisis. You know, we can't seem to keep prisoners in prison, which I find quite interesting. We just seem to have revolving doors on the ones that we bothered to build about 150 years ago.
Sure.
It is absolutely amazing to me how we get stuck on these issues because of the kind of drama of them, rather than realizing they are dead cats, and we should really just ignore them and start demanding more.
And I'm always intrigued by these characters like Morgan McSweeney, because if you look at his backstory, I mean, he's a Labour guy, came over from Ireland when he was a teenager, worked for the Labour Party, and that's kind of been his only real professional kind of area, I guess. And they sort of developed this kind of Svengali image, which is completely misplaced. There's no reason for that. I mean, he's even got the right name that intrigues people. So this kind of brilliance is projected onto them. And then you have to stop once in a while and go, hang on a second, whoa. Just because he's got an unusual name and sounds a bit Dickensian, and someone who has been there a long time, that combination doesn't make him brilliant.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, we did it to Steve Hilton, we did it to Dominic Cummings, we did it to Alistair Campbell, you know, the original aide that got too big.
Yeah.
It is interesting how these characters, but I have to admit, Campbell's line was, you should never be the story, and if you are, you should resign. I mean, he didn't really follow his own advice till the very last minute, but maybe Morgan might take the hint. But I don't think he will, because Keir Starmer can't afford to lose him, because we're not living in Starmerism. We're living in Morgan McSweeneyism. Starmer's just a vessel, and it's Morgan McSweeney that's really guiding a lot of the decisions inside Number 10. He's dictating policy, he's dictating a lot of the messaging work, because they've had, I think 3 directors of communication walk out now. I mean, once they start to leave, trust me, I know a lot of these people, that's when, you know, the ship is beyond repair and is sinking. But I have to admit, I don't think he's going to go, because he should have gone over Peter Mandelson. He should have gone over the dodgy donor situation when he was running the Labour In group over the Brexit campaign. There's lots of reasons he should have gone, and Keir Starmer should have fired him, and he didn't then. No. So I'm not quite sure why he's going to now, when I actually think Starmer may have been in on this, and I do think this is rather part of the plan that's getting out of control.
Yeah, it's certainly getting out of control. Well, we're asking that question, who would replace him? We'll continue to take calls and comments on that. Also, this devastating story, Peter, the safeguarding review into the death of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif found that neighbours, I mean, this is where we're at in this world, neighbours feared being branded racist if they raised concern about how she was being looked after. A council worker visited the wrong address 2 days before she died, and custody was granted to this man, her father, in 2019, despite abuse allegations. I mean, you really cannot imagine how so many things could have gone wrong, and this poor girl who lost her life to the most horrendous violence. Let's have a listen to Keir Starmer talking about this case.
My first response is a human response. This is just the most awful case. It's very hard to see and to read about for many people who'll be viewing this. Just shocking. So that's where I start on this. Obviously, there's going to be questions that need to be answered in relation to this case. I don't think that we should allow ourselves to think that whatever the rules on smacking are, that that's got anything to do with this case. This is about violence, it's about abuse, it's about making sure there's protection safeguards for children, particularly those being homeschooled.
Well, this is very awful, and apologies for the grim detail on this, but Peter, you'll be familiar with what happened here. She was discovered in August 2023. She'd been beaten, burned, hooded and strangled. It was a catalogue of abuse that had gone on for a long time. Her short life was marred almost consistently by violence and abuse from her own father, and that in itself is bad enough. But when you begin to read the details of this and realise that there were possible, I know hindsight is very powerful, but there were possible points when maybe somebody could have stepped in, but multiple reasons as to why not, including neighbours scared to report their concerns.
Yeah, definitely. This case is horrific, and it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. Because one thing we have to remember, this is a systemic chain of failure. It's not little errors and little mistakes. This was a profound dropping of the ball like you've never seen, because there's a couple of elements really that you have to pick out on. One, I believe that the identity politics that has dominated our culture has played a role, if not the leading role, into why these situations keep happening. Because you say there that, you know, we can't imagine these kind of errors happening in other cases. Well, I give you the Southport attack, where Axel Rudakabana was given to prevent 3 times to prevent these situations, and they failed. You know, we have to start accepting that, you know, the government institutions and the people running them are not fit for the office that they hold. And most importantly, why is it always kids at the moment? Why are we so incapable of protecting children, the most vulnerable people in our society that need us to be on our best game at all times? And we let them down again and again and again. But this hostile environment, this culture of being called a racist, can be parked very squarely at the door of the left, because that is who has been pushing this stuff. That is who has been saying, oh, you can't say that, and encouraging self-censorship, which is the most perverse bit of all of it, that we know something's wrong, but because we might get into trouble, we don't say anything, and bad things happen, and horrific things happen. We have to grow up, and I start to see it starting to abate a little bit, but not nearly fast enough when we look at the disaster of the grooming gangs inquiry. Yeah. Keir Starmer says that, yes, there'll be questions and we'll need answers, but we've got to implement things as well. I look at so many of the J report recommendations yet to be implemented. Why? This is my big question. We got to start asking, what are you doing, you know, in the day, rather than just pointing at something and saying that's terrible. That's not leadership, and we have to start demanding it.
Indeed. Absolutely bang on, Peter. Thank you. We'll talk more to Peter Barnes in just a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. We're asking that question. Who would replace Keir Starmer? I mean, just who would replace him as leader? But who should replace him as Prime Minister is also another question. Your thoughts on what is going on in number 10? It's absolute carnage over there at the moment. It's falling apart. The economy is slowing down like never before. 0.01% growth. Man alive. This is horrific stuff. Details to come. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
most sophisticated counter-terrorism systems and operations.
Well, we don't really.
You're
We've got a
telling me
counter-terrorism review. What?
We can't deal with one lady. We can't monitor and make sure that she's doesn't commit.
Ivan, I'm allowed to say this to you, mate. You're in Dubai. I'm not saying who you represent or how you make your money. I live in the United Kingdom. Our Justice Secretary had to admit yesterday that 91 people have actually escaped from prison in the last 12 months. I haven't got any faith in any systems.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Do you know what? The more I read some of your messages, the more I think that there are people out there who are not fans of Keir Starmer. Ange says, replace Keir Starmer with Larry the Cat. That's a good one. And Gary Pennison on Twitter says, Keir Starmer replacement, a tub of lard would be a good choice. Remember they did that on Have I Got News For You, didn't they? When a guest didn't show up, so they just put a big block of cooking fat on the desk. I can't remember who the guest was. Who was it? Roy Hattersley or somebody? I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, Roy Hattersley. How I remember that, I don't know. That's how far back that goes. God. 0344 499 1000. Peter Barnes is with us. Peter, you'd have known that factoid, wouldn't you?
Yes, I think you're right. I do remember. I've seen clips of it. I'm not old enough to remember it, I'm afraid.
Oh, get out of here. You're like my dad when you come on, Peter. Listen, let's move.
I'm 34, so
let's move to this story. London's shopping hub turned into tent city. There's big things going on. Tottenham Court Road has been transformed into long lines of tents on 2 private plots. This is right near a hospital. It's right near the tourist area. For those who don't know this neck of the woods, Tottenham Court Road comes literally off Oxford Street. It's a major thoroughfare from Trafalgar Square right into the kind of, the central parts, etc. This is a flipping mess. What's going on?
Well, it was the end result of a plan, if I'm being honest, because it's the reason that they removed the Vagrancy Act when everybody said, oh, it's really awful that being homeless and sleeping on the street is technically a crime. The Labour Party took that away, not for all these good reasons. They did it so that this could happen because they knew, as all of us did, that the exploding reality of the homelessness crisis in the capital, throw in the migrant crisis, and it was always going to happen. But it's business owners who are operating basically within a refugee camp at this point. It is unsafe. It's absolutely killing any kind of trade and economic movement, which we need from what is the country's premier shopping street.
Yeah.
It's a tourist destination. It is absolutely horrific, but it doesn't surprise me because, as per usual, the Labour Party here in London are all sermon and no follow-through. So they'll tell you how good it is to have all these people, all the diversity and all the rest of it, but this is the reality. And what's more important is now they're starting to kind of beat down those of us who are brave enough to say this isn't right. It's not fair. And I've always started to notice that the word fair keeps being cropped up again and again and again. And it's business owners, it's people who live in the area, it's just general Londoners. We see it everywhere. But I remember in COVID that we were able to get all the homeless people pretty much off the streets pretty quickly. If I remember right, there's the whole government operation behind it. Yet this one's been allowed to spiral out of control. I'm not one for big conspiracies. I usually believe they're incompetent, but this one's starting to kind of smell a little bit off to me.
Yeah, absolutely right. There's something, and I hadn't realised it was quite that bad over there as well. When we see sort of tented places, they do happen from time to time. And I'm reminded of Paris. I went and did a kind of sort of mini documentary in Paris a little while back, and it was horrific in that. Underneath all those kind of railway arches, it was just thousands of people in tented communities. I could scarcely believe this was the city of love that is Paris, but there it is, right on our own doorstep. Also this story, Peter, Labour have announced they will scrap police and crime commissioners, shifting oversight to mayors and councils. Let's first have a listen on this to Festus Akinbosoye, who's a former police and crime commissioner. He's been on the show with us many times. He explains a major reason why police and crime commissioners exist. Have a listen.
Police and crime commissioners and mayors with responsibilities for policing have the legal responsibility to speak on behalf of the public in policing. Their job is to be the voice of the public, including victims in policing circles.
Well, that's his reasoning behind why they exist. Let's also have a listen to Sarah Jones, the Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire. This is her speaking in the Commons this morning.
But the reality is that the PCC model has weakened local police accountability and has had perverse impacts on the recruitment of chief constables. They have failed to inspire confidence in local people, in stark contrast to the mayoral model, which has clearly been ultimately more successful.
I mean, they've always been a bit controversial, Peter, haven't they, as to whether they were ever needed in the first place. They've been around for a long time now. What's your take on this?
All is forgiven, Keir. This is the best thing he's ever going to do as Prime Minister, is scrap this pointless office that just costs us money and is not there to represent the community. It's there to represent the busybodies and the minority communities that want a very loud voice over the policing. And unfortunately, I tend to find that when I've had to deal with police and crime commissioner offices, there's nobody there, and you tend to find that you get more done in a way, which I find bizarre. But this is actually just a really fundamental misunderstanding, I think, when they were brought in about what people actually want from a government. They don't want more democracy, or they don't want more layers or kind of more kind of people. They want accountability, and they want something delivered on time, hopefully either on or under budget. And it was this idea of, it was adding, a voice into the police. There's already tools and mechanisms for that. And as we've seen, they're not usually very effective because they became a party political operation. I could understand them if they were kind of independent of the political kind of party system. But the minute that they got co-opted into it, they became pointless. Yeah. They were just another tool to throw mud at each other. It's just a ridiculous time. But I have to admit, all is forgiven, Keir. Well done on this one.
Indeed. And of course, it's not just that, you pay not just for the wages, which is an impressive wage for a police and crime commissioner, but the office as well and all that goes with it. It's an expensive luxury, if that is the right way to describe it. Peter, as ever, you've been brilliant, even though you do look like you're sitting in an Eastern European prison cell in 1978. It's been great to have Peter Barnes with us, as ever, on the programme. Thank you to him. Over to you shortly. We're going to get a couple of Labour voices on as well. Reference that question. Who would replace Keir Starmer? We're going to be speaking to Sebastian Salek and also James Matthewson, who are at very different parts of the Labour spectrum. Hear what they've got to say. Over to you as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Indeed. This comes from Russell, who says Peter Barnes is completely wrong about these issues being the result of left-minded thinkers pushing ideas. It's actually the right Conservatives' problem, as they allowed it all to be pushed under their watch. They could and certainly should have stopped it from happening. Unfortunately, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know which conversation you're referring to, Russell, because we had about 4 then. But I'm happy to run with Russell's interpretation. Reg says it absolutely does matter which one of these people off the front bench would be able to take over from Starmer. Let's get one of them in so we can have a good old giggle. If anybody could probably do any good for the country, it would be Lammy. He would cheer me up immensely. Yeah, Prime Minister Lammy, are you seeing that? Prime Minister Streeting, Prime Minister Corbyn, could he come? I mean, he's not even a member of the party now. Let's get a word on this. We're going to talk to James Mathewson in a second, former Labour spokesman and never been particularly happy with the Starmer administration. I can say that. We'll talk to him in a moment. Sebastian Salek is with us first, Labour councillor and commentator. Sebastian, you've always, every time we've spoken, you appear to be a Starmer man. Are you still backing the PM all the way?
I am, and do you know why? I think above everything else, if you put aside what you think about Starmer or what you think about Labour, the one thing we need as a country right now is a bit of continuity. We've gotten really addicted to throwing out our Prime Minister after 2 years or 3 years when we get fed up with them. We've had a string of failed projects, and what we need now is somebody who can deliver their project start to finish. It's the only way we're going to get out of the mess that we're in.
What is the vision? I mean, you say consistency, and that is often a stock answer. You know, we don't want to interrupt the flow. I mean, many people would say on that point, Sebastian, the flow of what? I mean, it's chaos out there. The economy is down the dumps. We've got all sorts of things going on in terms of broken manifesto pledges on the way. Life isn't great. Starmer's had no honeymoon period. It's been a bit of a disaster. Why are you still backing him?
Yeah, I think it's about security. So security in our homes and reforming renters' rights so you can feel secure where you live. Security in your job, giving workers more rights than they've ever had before. So you can have sick pay from day one. You can't be kicked out of your job as you can be at the moment, any time into your 2-year mark. Security in the country. We've got threats.
Well, you said that like that's a good thing. You said that's like a good thing. Yeah, we've got businesses on their knees at the moment, and you know, no business gets rid of somebody just for a laugh. They only get rid of somebody if they're not good enough. So giving them extraordinary rights where they might be entitled to litigate if they lose their job after 6 hours into a shift at the bakery, I mean, that's not a good thing. That's a terrible thing for small business.
Well, to be clear, that's not what is on the table. You're still going to be able to get rid of somebody within their probation. That's going nowhere. But this is about making sure that people feel secure. We can't have people losing their jobs, losing their homes. That's an awful way for anyone to live. We need stability in society and, of course, stability in the economy. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, clearly, but you need to have an extended period of time where the project can play out and we can turn the economy around.
You've mentioned what I would consider to be 2 of the worst elements of Labour policy. One is the Renters' Rights Bill, or now the law, which didn't really need to happen because those laws are already in place. You can't just kick somebody out your house. That doesn't happen. It takes forever to do. You really can't. It takes forever.
Section 21 and
yes, but that takes forever. You don't. The Section 21 doesn't mean you just lose somebody. No one wants to kick somebody out their house for a giggle.
No, but what's more important here, the investor or the person for whom that is their home?
The investor. It's their home.
Remember,
it's their house.
Yeah, sure. It's
but if they need to sell their house to, I don't know, pay for care for a relative or for some other purpose, that's up to them, isn't it?
But the investors made a choice. They've got a chunk of money and they've thought, ooh, where am I going to put this? You could have put that into public markets or elsewhere. Yeah. But they've chosen to put it into the housing market. Yeah. And I believe that when you...
And that already comes with lots and lots of rules and regulations. It comes with lots of rules and regulations.
Rightly so, but I would argue not enough. And that's what Labour is addressing.
No, but the problem with that, Sebastian, as I see it...
This is the important point. If you're a renter, you don't have the choice. You can't just go and buy a home. So you have to know that you're secure in your home. And let's look at what the reality of that means. happens. If you're a young family with your child in a school, and suddenly you get served your Section 21, that child might have to change school, they might have to change neighbourhoods, and that is really damaging.
But a landlord is only going to do that for one of two reasons. One, because the tenant is, you know, completely out of line or out of order on a particular issue. They don't pay their rent or something like that, which is quite typical. The other would be that you no longer want to be a landlord, that you can't do it, or you need to sell the property. You've got bills to pay yourself.
That's not true. I know lots of people who've been evicted because the landlord wants to hike the rent. And that is, you know, if you're an investor, that looks like quite a reasonable thing to do. But if you're a tenant, that feels really, really oppressive. And it's the same with fire and rehire in the jobs market. People are being sacked and then hired back on less favourable...
We've got some of the strongest workers' rights on planet Earth in this country.
Sorry?
We've got some of the strongest workers' rights on planet Earth in this country, Sebastian.
Well, not strong enough. If you can fire somebody and rehire them on less favourable terms, that doesn't feel very fair,
How many people get fired and then rehired on less favourable terms?
I don't know, but it happens. I can't give you a fixed number, but the point is that is allowed in this country.
But these are very kind of sort of Rayner-esque, hyper left-wing kind of, you know, we don't like landlords and we don't like bosses because they're capitalists, they exploit workers. It's this kind of inbuilt belief that all the people that are running stuff and succeeding are the bad guys and everyone else is the good guys, the pirates of bricks and mortar.
I'm really, really pro-aspiration, but I think I would wager that you are out of step with a lot of your listeners here. Many people are going to be renters. Most of them are going to be workers rather than being bosses.
And they have rights. And they have rights, and most never get kicked out of anywhere.
But when they do, it's life-changing. And if you look at the polling on this, these policies are incredibly popular with reform voters. And I'm very surprised that Farage hasn't got around this. I think this is a big political misstep.
I can't imagine many reform voters putting their name to a landlord not being able to run their own business.
70% on these.
Really we'll maybe pursue that point another time. Back to the main issue, though. It is chaos in Downing Street at the moment. Why is Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff plotting and creating narratives that didn't need to be created? What's going on?
Well, we don't know who it is. That's the problem. Somebody is up to some funny business. You don't know, I don't know. Only a few people on this planet know. It's not for me to speculate on who that might be. I don't think that's fair. But whoever it is, they need to stop now because it is really damaging.
Well, we've just had the death knell happen as we've been speaking, Sebastian. Keir Starmer said he retains full confidence in Morgan McSweeney. I mean, that's the point when you know the guy's going to go, isn't it? Because it always comes about 48 hours before a good firing.
Well, that's one argument. It really depends on what happens in between. With Angela Rayner, there was a very important Standards Commissioner decision that happened, and that was the catalyst for her.
But he had the full confidence in Rayner, didn't he? He had the full confidence in Louise Hay. He had the full confidence in all the other junior ministers that had gone.
There was a process there, and it was followed.
Well, apparently he's been assured that no briefing against ministers was done from Number 10. Well, that's at odds with reality, isn't it?
That's really curious. I wonder who it is, but whoever it is, they need to stop doing this. It is not helpful for the government. It's not helpful for the country because what happens next? You get people talking on the record, you get people resigning, you get the government collapsing. I don't think anybody in this country, whatever your political views are, want a government to collapse and another government to come in and start from phase one right now.
Look, I know you're a Labour politician, so it's maybe not in your interest to say it out loud, but if Starmer walked the plank, who should replace him?
It's far too early. You'd have to see who's standing.
Well, we know who the central players are, don't we? Look at the front bench. Just pick one of three. You've got Rachel Reeves, David Lammy and Wes Streeting. Which one of those three, Sebastian?
I'd really have to hear their individual pictures.
Well, yeah, but you know what they're kind of all about. Their fabric of the people, the way they conduct themselves as politicians. So you had to pick one of those three. Who are you going for?
Well, as I say, it comes down to what they say, and I'll explain why. If one of them says, look, I'm going to completely rip up everything we've done, here's my new idea, I've been working on this for decades, let's go in this direction, I'd be really sceptical of that. I'd rather have somebody who says, we've got a lot right here, we have to see it to fruition. So really somebody who's going to go for a bit of continuity would be first place for me.
I'm taking you'd go for Wes Streeting, though, wouldn't you? I mean, if you had to, if somebody had a gun to your toes, you'd say Wes. It's going to be Wes, isn't it?
I certainly want to lose any toes.
You're a young politician. He's a young politician. Come on, you're Team Wes all the way, Sebastian.
What I would say is that if Wes's day comes, he will be a brilliant Prime Minister.
So it's Wes.
with complete certainty.
Okay.
What I don't want to do now is inadvertently fire the starting gun on a leadership race, because I think we need Prime Minister Starmer in number 10 to see this project through. It's in everybody's interest, regardless of what we think of him.
Sebastian, always great to have you on. Thank you. Sebastian Salek, he's the Labour councillor and commentator. Let's speak with James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman. We don't agree on everything, James. We probably don't agree on very much at all, frankly, but, you know, we're both reasonable.
True.
We're both reasonable blokes, and I know we could share a pint and it'd be a giggle. But I can say we probably agree on this, that Keir Starmer is not doing a great job.
That's true. Although I will say, you know, I'm teetotal, so we couldn't even share a pint.
Oh,
That's
for God's sake. I'm learning more by the day about you. What's going on, James?
Nothing at all, I know. But no, you're absolutely right. This is an absolute pig's ear, isn't it, at the moment, with Keir Starmer. And I just can't, you know, whilst I love disagreeing with you, Ian, and, you know, it's not my favour to come on and just disagree with Labour people and people I'm meant to have more in common with. But hearing Sebastian there just reminds me why I'm no longer in the Labour Party and why I've had to leave, because it's just this, like, detachment from reality, isn't it? It's just like, we need Keir Starmer to continue, we need continuity, it's the last thing we need is more of the same. That is what people are screaming from left and from right at the Labour Party about, is that you cannot keep on going on the way that you are. You need to change.
Yeah, I think I've said this to you before, and I'll continue to say it as well, but I thought it was great when Jeremy Corbyn ran the Labour Party. And the reason I did, and when I was watching the campaigning, when it was him against Theresa May, and I remember thinking, right, this makes sense to me as a democracy. There is a Labour man and there is a Tory woman, and there's two distinct choices here. It's quite clear what Corbyn stood for. Corbyn's been around, you know, even since when I was a kid, it seems. He's been there forever. He's very rarely changed his position on the fundamentals of what he believes in. And I might fundamentally disagree with him, but I know what he stands for, and he sounds like a Labour man, as distinct from whatever kind of mishmash of ideas we've got going on now. Does that analysis speak to where you are?
Yeah. I mean, look, Jeremy believes in things. I think that's the difference, isn't it? You know, and I think if you have self-belief, what you're looking for in a leader is somebody who believes themselves. You're not going to go out on a limb and vote for somebody and have faith in somebody's beliefs if they don't even have faith in them, and you don't think that they believe themselves. At least with Jeremy, you did know that. I mean, when I came out of the party under Jeremy's leadership, I published a paper that was highly critical of the leadership and what had gone wrong and all the things that happened that were bad and all the rest of it. And my central theme of that was we were too focused on ideological purity, which I maintain we were.
Yeah.
However, we've gone the opposite way now. We've gone for this direction of, like, no ideology at all driving anything.
That is bang on, isn't it? I said at the beginning, you know, when they talk about, you know, we need consistency and we need Mr. Starmer to continue the vision. And I genuinely, objectively, James, are trying to find what that vision is. It doesn't matter if you disagree with somebody, but at least you can say, you know, with Thatcher, for example, it was absolutely crystal clear what her vision was. Now, you could see it. It was illuminated in front of every time she spoke.
Exactly.
Jeremy Corbyn, as we just mentioned, originally that was the case. With Starmer, I can't see that. But if there had to be a replacement of Starmer, and this is kind of where these headlines at the moment are going, I doubt whether they'll come to that anytime soon. What kind of person replaces him in the Labour Party?
It's such a big job. It's like, you know, it's like putting a sticking plaster over it, just getting a new person at the moment, because that person would have to have the commitment to the idea that they need to find the soul of the party again, and that's a bigger mission.
Who is that, James? Who do you think that is?
Probably valuable. I mean, I look around the current front bench and I can't see anyone. I mean, there's people who have talent and who are good speakers, like Wes Streeting, but I don't trust his politics. I don't trust him. I think it would be more of the same. I think.
I think that's true. I've known Wes Streeting since he was a councillor, and I admire the fact that he, you know, came in very young and ambitious, and that's all great. But when you
bad thing, though, I think. Ian,
you could be bang on about that.
I've never trusted these people who, like, I've seen them for years. It used to drive me insane. I would come down from the northeast, right, for Labour Party conference, and I would meet these hordes of of young Labour people who had suits on from the age of 16 and red ties, and I felt like they were cosplaying. I felt like they were like trying to like dress up like what they thought a politician was.
Yes, that's right.
And
I remember there's
famously
famous clip of. I'm sure you've seen it, of William Hague when he was about 16, addressing the Tory conference. And I remember at the time, thinking, well, that's the kind of kid that I wanted to kick the snot out of when I was a kid. And I say that kindly, obviously not really, but you take the point. And people go, oh, he's brilliant, this bloke. And it's like, when you see Jacob Rees-Mogg when he was like 14 and he looks like Jacob Rees-Mogg now, you think that's always a bit worrying, that you kind of don't have a life beforehand. But nonetheless, Streeting is a good, he's a good media player, but it's kind of, you need a bit more than that.
Yeah, he's like Starmer V2, right? He's like what you would want Starmer to be now, like somebody who's a bit more charismatic. But look, I look to people like Angela Rayner, who's been booted, Lou Hague, who's been booted. I don't think they would have a real big chance of coming back. Andy Burnham, I think, could unite the party, but he's a million miles away from any mechanism to do so. It's just not a bright future immediately for the Labour Party, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Are you going Polanski bound on your political travels by any chance, James?
I like him. I've spoken to him, and I think I know that I agree with him on lots of things, and probably would consider a vote for him. It's a bit different for me because I'm in Scotland as well, you see, and so the Greens are a different Greens here, and they're a different Green Party. So it's a bit different for me, and they're also pro-independence, and I'm not pro-independence. And then the thing with Polanski is I can't trust him on defence. Like, is it too much to ask for left-wingers who also believe in the military existing and believe in not pulling out of NATO? Because I can't find them anywhere, and that's the problem for me.
Hen's teeth and all that stuff. James, great to have you on with us as ever. Thank you, James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman, not enamoured by the Labour Party and really not sure who he might support if there were to be some kind of leadership contest. Your thoughts on that? I mean, who would replace Starmer? Quite serious question. 0344 499 1000. What about the overarching, the wider issue about where we are? Do we need a general election? Has it got that bad? I mean, lots of governments go through terrible times. We don't have a general election every time there's a bit of jip over there at Downing Street, but this is looking like really brittle for Starmer right now. No great headlines that he can point to kind of back things up either, which makes it a kind of double dose of doom for the Prime Minister. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ian says, it's a nice little kind of, is this a metaphor? I suppose it is. Living under this government is like trying to enjoy a bag of chips on Brighton's seafront. All you get is pooed on and your chips nicked. It's a very good point. I've been there as well, Ian. Sympathise with your brother. This comes from Martin. He says, afternoon, Ian. Martin from Cambridge here. On the subject of who or what could replace, I like the what, could replace Keir Starmer. Straight off the bat, I think a tree is better to look at and sounds better when the wind blows through the leaves. And on top of that, I know for a fact that a tree can't damage the country as much as Starmer is. Have a great day. Bye. Love it. Thank you for that, Martin. Back to your calls. Tarquin, down in London. What have you got for us, Tarquin?
Good morning, Ian. Is it morning still?
I know, we're well into the afternoon now. You're in some kind of time vortex over there. What's going on?
It is. It's time vortex time. No,
whereabouts in London are you, by the way?
Yes.
Whereabouts in London?
London, Ontario. No.
Stop it.
I can't tell you, sir, because walls have ears. I don't want to.
The authorities might be listening.
I'm in the great metropolis.
The services, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Graham's right next to me, so I can't say where I am.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. I get it.
In terms of Labour, I think we are looking at the demonic deck chairs on the Trotskyite Titanic, as I call it.
It's interesting.
It's all doom and gloom, and I think if they could put the health and welfare of the nation above party politics here, they would resign. They don't have the cojones, the intelligence, the experience in business to navigate this. Being realistic, they really don't. But they are going to put their own career political, politician above us. Yeah. And I think it's so sad. It's so sad. But in some ways, the whole of the Uniparty, this is a symptomatic, you see, of the Uniparty demise. We're just watching the end of an era, and we're just sort of going over the nuances of who's going to be holding the rudder, the helm when it actually goes over the cliff.
Do you sense it's that bad? I mean, I know that for those of us that aren't Labour supporters or naturally gravitate to that part of the spectrum, we like to have a laugh and a pop. Everybody does. Political satirical shows and all that stuff do the same thing. But genuinely, do you think we're in that kind of horrendous territory?
We are, because it's all to do with the bond market. I'm not going to bore anyone with the finances of all this, but the whole credibility of a government relies on the relationship they have with the financial market and the ability to borrow money at certain interest rates. We all know we are trillions in debt. We all know that we can't see. We say we collectively. I'm saying it, just a generic sense that you and I don't have the power to do this, but the powers that be, whether it's the non-independent Bank of England who look after its own interests, and we don't have any control over interest rates, for example. All of that weaves itself into these, the nuances of, do you think Rachel's going to get the gig? Do you think Angela will come back? It's all like, yeah, whatever. It's like we're all in a big SH1T show at the moment, and it's pretty serious out there. People are genuinely. You just have to.
But you know what makes it? And I know we live in a world now where we're all commentators, and we have social media and we have 24-hour news and all of that stuff that we're well familiar with. But it would be a little bit digestible if times were bad, but you thought the main man had your back. you could kind of go, OK, it's a bit rubbish. Life is sometimes ups and downs, peaks and troughs. We can ride the storm because look who's in charge. I don't always agree with them, but they know what they're doing. That's the bit that's missing here. That's why we've been left in this kind of strange, horrific political limbo. Tarquin, wherever you are, thank you very much indeed. That's Tarquin down in London. More from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. You can message 87222. Right now, let's get the latest news headlines here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. What are we talking about? What are we not talking about here? So much to get through. Naturally, you'd expect nothing else. We are looking at what is going on in number 10. Cabinet ministers urging Keir Starmer to sack his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, after hostile number 10 briefings, mainly about Wes Streeting. There seems to be an issue around this, and many of the people around in the Labour Party are saying, look, if you don't sort this out, we're going to end up having a general election. We'll be annihilated if that happens. Your thoughts on that? And by the way, who would replace Keir Starmer as leader? Even if you're not a Labour supporter, who would literally... I mean, it would go... I think Wes Streeting would probably get the job. I don't know if he should get the job. But in the absence of any other brilliance around, I can't imagine who else. Also this afternoon, a safeguarding review into the death of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif has found that neighbours feared being branded racist if they raised concerns. It also reveals that a council worker went to the wrong address 2 days before she died, and that custody was granted to her father. And this is arguably one of the most disturbing aspects. Custody granted to her father in 2019 despite previous abuse allegations against him. We'll continue to look at that in just a few moments. And a British medical journal analysis has warned against young people vaping, with teenagers being uniquely vulnerable to nicotine, affecting their attention, memory, mood, and even school performance. It seems that the government has been asleep at the wheel, dazzled by industry spin about vaping helping adults to quit cigarettes, but took their eye off the ball when it came to kids taking up nicotine. Unintended consequences and all of that. Details on the way. 0344 499 1000. Neil says there has to be an election. The state the nation is in because of incompetence. They don't know what they're doing. One here, no name given. It should be brought into law that if a Prime Minister resigns or is ousted, then it should trigger a general election. I understand that we vote for the party and its policies, not the leader, but they're also a big factor. The Labour Party could have the best policies and manifesto, but have someone like David Lammy as its leader, and there'd be no way I would vote for him. And that's an interesting point that is raised there. Of course, you don't vote for the individual, you vote for the party, and in theory, if you're voting for your local Labour MP, they sing from the same hymn sheet as the person that's leading the party. But we all know political parties are wide spectrums of opinion, from the Corbynites to the Blairites. It's never a kind of one-size-fits-all thing. So, yes, you don't vote for the leader, but you kind of do in a weird sort of way. I mean, they're the ones that go out on the campaign trail. So let's move to this just incredibly devastating, disturbing story, the safeguarding review into the death of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif. As I was just saying, this is... And how often, I've lost count of how many times I've done this, how often do we have to read out the catalogue of errors around the death of a child? We remember this with Baby P, Victoria Columbier and others. Where there's a very similar trend here. Eyes off the ball. Social workers that said everything seemed to be okay. Schools that missed what were sometimes glaringly obvious. In this case, we have neighbours and other organisations that were scared to raise issues because they felt it might make them racist if they did. The fact that the father was granted custody, despite the fact, and this was in 2019, despite the fact there were allegations of abuse against him. I have no idea how that could happen. Let's speak with Javid Khan, former CEO of Barnardo's. Javid, good afternoon to you. I mean, look, it doesn't need underlining anymore just how horrific this case is, but I'm sure you perhaps share what I was just saying, that concern that I know hindsight is, incredibly helpful and all the rest of it, but we do so often see many missed opportunities to spot something going so terribly wrong.
Well, look, I mean, obviously, like everybody else has been saying today, this is a tragic case, but yet another tragic case, as you introduced in your opening remarks, that when you look back over at least the last 20 years, there's been a catalogue of children who have ended up dying, and all of the reviews have raised the issues that this review raises. So it's not the first time that we're being told that multiple opportunities to intervene and save this child's life were missed by all of the professionals whose job it is to do exactly that. The bruises were seen by the teachers at the school. She was taken out of school. A home visit wasn't done when it should have been done to check on her. The father was a known abuser, and yet the court gave custody to the parents. A catalogue of mistakes. And unfortunately, it's not the first time. So something different really has to happen.
Yeah. And how do we, I look back to, I mentioned Baby P, one of the sort of most famous cases in this. Victoria Columbier, Star Hobson. I mean, there is this awful list. And there is a synergy between the errors, it seems. It's not as if they're all completely different. There's a lot of similarity.
An enormous amount of similarity, and one that always gets to me is the point that all these reviews make of lack of information sharing between the agencies, between the professionals, those that have set up to protect children. And why isn't that information being shared? Now, a number of governments over the years have tried to do something about this. So, the cases you mentioned, from Victoria Columbier to Baby P, the Children's Services, the current setup was set up as a result of those tragic events. And yet still there are weaknesses in the system that we've got to address. Now, I've got to say, I mean, having been a teacher before my career and led services and led social workers and worked in multi-agency teams, I mean, my heart goes out to the individual staff. I think we've got to remember, right? These are highly committed, salt of the earth people who spend their lifetimes trying to protect and prevent. But something is going wrong. Is it about their workloads just being too demanding? So the average social worker these days has well over 30 cases that they're dealing with at the same time in parallel.
Yeah.
Now, how realistic is that? We know the services are under-resourced in a whole range of ways. So you talk to any local authority chief executive and they will say that one of the greatest demands that they have to grapple with is children's services along with adult services. The bulk of the budget, 75% of their budgets get spent on that, and yet it's still not enough.
Yeah.
The age of austerity and all of that has had an effect on this. So these are people who are highly committed, trying to do the right thing, and yet the organization and the funding of the organization and the systems that they work with and across with the police and with the courts are still failing the children.
Yeah. And it is this business of other agencies or other organisations like teaching and the like not reporting things. Is that, I mean, is there any part of us that should understand that dilemma that a teacher is in? Do they raise an issue? Or even neighbours who thought there might be something going on, they want to get accused of being racist because they thought that would put them into a terrible position. I mean, I get it, until you're in that position, I suppose it is quite a big thing, isn't it, to pick up a phone and ring someone and say, I think the kid next door but one to me is being beaten up, because that could start a whole chain of events. And if you haven't got it right, then you could, almost destroy a family in doing that. So I know it's not easy, but it seemed in this kind of case that there were some pretty telling signs.
I think the report says today that there were some examples of individuals who could have done something when they chose not to. But I think that's a minor issue. The major issue is a lot was known about this child and what she was suffering, and yet still the right interventions weren't being made. So my advice to people always is, if you think a child might be suffering or being abused, err on the side of caution and report it.
Yeah.
And then the agencies come in and do an assessment, and if it's wrong, nothing serious will happen about that. So don't worry about that, but don't let it go by just in case something was happening. The issue here really is those professionals who had the responsibility and the training weren't up to the mark, and we've got to do something about that. And I think improved training is one of the recommendations in this report. I was really, really pleased to see that. In fact, there's a whole range of recommendations, and I would support them all, but they've got to be done quickly.
Yeah. Spot on. Javed, great to have you on with us, sir. Thank you for your time. Javed Khan, he is the former CEO of Barnardo's. And one of the many heartbreaking moments of this story, and everything about it is so awful, is that if you look at some of the images of Sarah Sharif, and we were just showing them on the screen there, her at school, her smiling, her dressed up, her playing with her friends, her looking happy and smiling and looking as if quite literally nothing is going on. And I know they call this masking, and kids can do it with all sorts of, autism is a classic area, ADHD, where, a teacher will go, well, there's nothing wrong with this kid. It's like, yeah, but no, when they come home, there's like terrible things happen. And they can mask things, and they can mask things in certain settings. And this young girl, and she was 10, for God's sake, when she finally lost the battle against chronic systemic abuse from her own dad. And the details are so disturbing. I not only would I not want to, I don't even think I'd be allowed to read out the fuller details of what happened to this young girl. But it appears that on most days, she went to school, covered with a hijab in many cases, and nobody spotted anything, because she was smiling and she was laughing. Now, that, to me, the greatest tribute, perhaps, and it sounds empty in many respects, is to look at the sheer bravery of the mind of a 10-year-old who's being abused on a daily basis, but walks out the door and smiles and jumps and skips and hops with her friends. I mean, that is just, I don't even know what part of the human mind of a 10-year-old is able to do that. But she did. Demonstrably, she did. It is beyond heartbreaking. And this animal will spend the rest of his life, we hope, in jail. I mean, he should be dangling from a rope, frankly, right now, but maybe that's another story. Let's move to this story. We touched on this a little earlier. Labour announcing they will scrap police and crime commissioners, shifting the responsibilities to mayors and councils. Not necessarily Labour, whoever they happen to be, I guess. Let's speak with Festus Akinboseye, who is a former police and crime commissioner. We've spoken before, Festus. Great to have you on with us. You've always been very defensive of the role of police and crime commissioner. You've outlined what it stands for and what it does. What do you make of this, that Labour are considering getting rid of them?
I mean, it doesn't really surprise me when you consider the fact that since the role of police and crime commissioners were created, the Labour Party have not fared very well at all in terms of getting Labour PCCs elected until the last one in 2024. More than about 60-70% of all police and crime commissioners in the country were Conservative until last year, when it now became more of a 50-50 split. So we're seeing now a shift to a mayoral model where you're going to have more mayors like Sadiq Khan, who is the police and crime commissioner for London. So we're going from one to another one, and it's a matter of whether people believe that's a better way of doing things or not.
I suppose in the case of London, Sadiq Khan, who is technically the police and crime commissioner, I don't know if that's given as an official title, but he's in charge of policing.
That is part of his title.
So the title is in the job. He would still retain that position, though, wouldn't he, under this idea? Because Labour are talking about giving the responsibility to elected mayors, so he would still be doing the same job, I guess.
Correct. Yes, that's right. So he will still be the police and crime commissioner. But what he then does, so when you have mayors with policing responsibilities, they delegate that responsibility to a deputy mayor for policing. And it's, I mean, what the evidence seems to show over the last couple of years is that some of the worst performing police forces in the country have been those that have operated under a mayoral model, where they look at some of those that have gone into special measures. Almost all of those that operated under a mayoral model up until recently were in special measures. Every one of them.
Just tell us the role of Police and Crime Commissioner. We did play a little clip of you earlier talking about what it entails, because it has, when it was introduced under the Conservatives, it was always a bit controversial. It was, what do we need a Police and Crime Commissioner? We've got chief constables, we've got all sorts of, federation people, loads, we don't need another layer of bureaucracy. Why do we need Police and Crime Commissioners, Festus?
Well, there's never been a time in the history of British policing, to the best of my knowledge, where there hasn't been some kind of oversight and governance structure of policing. Either it was the old Metropolitan Police Board, or whether it was the Police Authority, and then Police and Crime Commissioners, and now mayors, and now a police board. There's always been an oversight and scrutiny of policing by the public, or people who are represented by the public, who represent the public, rather. What the police and crime commissioners do, though, is you hold the entire police budget, you raise the police precept, so from the funding, you set the strategy for policing, you hire and fire chief constables. What many people don't actually realize as well that police and crime commissioners do, which is not so much about policing directly, is the crime part. So the victim care, the funding of services for those who have been affected by crime, the funding of intervention to prevent crime from happening. All of that pot of money comes to a police and crime commissioner, and your job is to commission services to make this happen in your local area. But what I will confess is that there were some very good police and crime commissioners. I would like to say I was one of those, by the way, Ian.
even if you say it yourself.
And there were, the evidence shows it. Look at the numbers. But some were dreadful. But then let's face it, there are some MPs who are also dreadful. And there are some MPs who are good. There are some councillors who are good. There are some councillors who are not very good. Do we scrap MPs as well?
Well, yes, I'd quite like to scrap some MPs, but you're right. There are also, that when you find a good one, Festus, they are worth their weight in gold. Listen, great to have you on with us again. Festus Akinboseye, who is a former police and crime commissioner in Bedfordshire. Thank you to him. Over to you on that one and the other stories we're talking about as well. Big question about who would replace Keir Starmer. I mean, we're in that territory, right? There's all sorts of malarkey going on Downing Street. If Starmer walked the plank, you look at that front bench, or maybe some of the back benches, who would get the big gig in your book? Ideally, many of you would say, well, let's just have a general election and cut to the chase. Thoughts on that one as well? 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Leslie, who says, yeah, maybe Starmer is not the right person to run the country, but the bottom line is the country has been declining for the past 14 years under the Tory government. There is no way in hell that we should be expecting the new government to fix things in such a short space of time. Not even Farage will be able to do that. I think the media is responsible for winding everybody up, which needs to stop, says Leslie. There's always a bit of that going on. Of course, that's called... I'm fascinated. If I had to write a paper... If I was at university, which I never went to, by the way, you can probably tell. If I was at university and I had to write a politics paper, I would write it on the 14 years of the Tory government, because it wasn't really 14 years, of course. It was 5 years of a coalition government. And most of that time, I know it depends on where you sit politically and what you think about austerity, which was a part of that. But most of that time, it just sort of ticked along, didn't it? It wasn't that controversial. I mean, I know people are going to start messaging and going, you've forgotten this or that. But generally speaking, it bobbed along quite consistently. And it was a bit weird because it was a coalition and most of us had never experienced one of those before. And it felt more like a sort of management setup than a philosophically led kind of position because it was a coalition. But it just kind of floated along and it wasn't ideal and it was a bit strange. So I've always taken slight questioning on the issue of they mucked it up for 14 years. You've got to remember, in 2010, and Mervyn King and others, former head of the Bank of England, many others had said back in 2008, when there was the financial crash, that the next 20 years are going to be a wipeout for whoever is in power. So I always think, and also remember the Tories, for those who don't like the Tories because of Brexit, but the Tories voted against Brexit, of course. Their position was anti-Brexit. Their position was Remain. It was only when, of course, it changed to Boris Johnson, who pretended he was a Brexiteer, that it kind of got different and people thought he was the champ of all champs. He was worshipped like a sort of Farage or a Trump character. You could see through him like a net curtain, for God's sake. I mean, it was pretty obvious. Georgina is in London. What is going on, Georgina? What are you thinking? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Ian. Well, I think they're all absolutely useless. None of them have got the compass mentors to run this country within the Labour Party. I think Wes Streeting has been put in as a little bit of a red herring. I don't think they've got any intention of putting Wes Streeting in number 10. But what I think they are going to put Shabana Mahmood in number 10, and I'll tell you for why. It ticks the box of diversity and inclusion. She would be the first Muslim female Prime Minister in Great Britain, and that also ticks a box for them getting the Muslim vote, which they would desperately need.
Don't they get that anyway, more or less?
Well, no, I don't think they do. I think they get a lot, and they're doing everything in their power to get more Muslim voters.
Just on that point, Georgina, what is it about? Why is that? If you look at most people, most Muslims that I meet are supremely conservative.
Right, just hang on a minute.
Let me just finish that point. And in their country of origin, for those who weren't born here, they would support a system that was far more right-wing than the current Conservative Party. I'm not talking about Sharia law or throwing people off buildings and stuff. The Islamism. I'm talking about just the average moderate Muslim would be conservative.
I have met a lot of very, very decent, nice Muslim families, a lot of them. But these Muslim families, let me tell you, put Britain and British culture first, okay? Now, with the majority of Muslims, their religion comes first, as does Shabana Mahmood. She actually did a talk on the television saying that her religion, which is Islam, comes first. Now, I'm very sorry, if you are going to be in British politics, then your religion must not be coming first. It must be the well-being of Britain and the British public every time. That's the first rule of government. So to say that, Islam is the first and foremost, I'm very sorry.
But isn't that... I mean, I'm not going to defend that position. I can't remember the context in which he said it, but I remember there was an interview about it. But I seem to remember that there's been lots of politicians over the years that have talked about their religion comes before. Isn't that a general point about your faith, that guides you in life?
Your religion guides you within your life, but within your job, especially if you are within a job of such power. And running this country is a job of great responsibility, and with that comes a lot of power. Yeah. You have got to put this country first. I'm sorry. We have got to start getting very tough on who is running this country, because from what I can see, Ian, and I don't know if anyone agrees with me, I might be out on my own here and out on a limb, But the people who've been running this country for the past 20 years, and that I could go back further, I could go back 50 years, I am that old, you know, they have not been running it for the best reasons for this country. They seem to be running it for their own ideologies, to do what they want with it. But the thing is, they are running it on our behalf, and there's got to be a point, a cut-off switch, where we say, do you know what, you're making such a terrible job of this. I mean, I've not got a lot of time for Keir Starmer, I've got to tell you. I don't know him as a person. He might be a fabulous husband, he might be a super dad, but as a Prime Minister, he's absolutely crap. He's run this country. No, don't laugh.
Maybe that's the new slogan.
You know, at the end of the day, I saw him on PMQs yesterday, and I've never seen a man's hand shake so much. The man is a bag of nerves. He knows that trouble is on the horizon. He knows something's coming. I wouldn't wish a mental breakdown on anyone. I don't care who they are. I wouldn't do that. You know, but this man, I'm telling you, he's on the cusp. This is not a good place.
Do you know, I reckon you've only got to look at all those, you know, senior cabinet ministers. They age within about 2 months of being in those jobs. I mean, they are they're relentless. Even if they're rubbish at the jobs, they're relentless, and they are almost thankless. If you're the Home Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, the Prime Minister, you know, it never, ever stops. The downtime pretty much ceases to exist in your life for the period of time you have the gig. Georgina, love the passion as ever. Thank you very much indeed for that. Margaret says, Margaret's in Yorkshire, says, general election, please. Labour in such turmoil, the fiscal policy out of hand, and two-tier policing, borders out of control, and they need a mandate to continue. Off to the polling booths is the only answer. I think a lot of people would support that. It's the kind of common sense stuff, isn't it, that you think, you know, no, is there anyone in the land that thinks, you know, we shouldn't secure our borders, as an obvious example? It's an obvious example. I think most people, left or right, would say secure our borders. I know people have different ideas of what you then do. Some say, yes, secure the borders, as in boats, but then open up other avenues to allow people to come in. It doesn't make you a mad racist if you think there should be some kind of moratorium, as certainly I would, on immigration. That would begin the process of saying, right, this is fair to everybody. You've obviously got to look at exceptions on that in terms of, you know, genuinely highly skilled people, rather than jobs that are pretending to be highly skilled when they are clearly not. I mean, if you just had that as a policy, if that was your one policy, I think people would go, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. There's no one would disagree with that, would they? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk back to Bob in Ludlow and others. And if you've got loads of people hanging on, Lenny's there, Mark, Nick, Dave, and others. Sounded quite biblical, that, didn't it? Peter, Paul, all of them. Lines are open. You can message 87222, and back with more from you coming next on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
It's always a beauty when Kev's on, back at 7 this evening. Lots to get through here, including this. Teen vaping is spiralling. There's literally no surprise to me when I read that headline. The science behind it is actually quite brutal. This has been looked at by the British Medical Journal analysis that's warned that teenagers are uniquely vulnerable to nicotine. Lots of problems, they argue, which are attention, lasting hits to attention, memory, mood, school performance, and a fast track to addiction that opens the door to other substances and smoking. Many people will be divided on that point. The suggestion of why this has happened goes something like this. Governments have been asleep at the wheel because lots of the industry, and I assume the smoking industry, have come along and said, look, you know, get adults onto vapes because it's better than smoking, and everybody went along with it. But in doing so, it was the law of unintended consequences. Loads of kids then took it up, and of course they are strawberry and bubblegum flavour and stuff, and so what could go wrong? Well, there's still an addictive component to vaping, and many saying it's now out of control. Let's speak with Caroline Cherney, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of the Action on Smoking and Health, ASH. Good afternoon to you, Caroline. Nice to have you with us. What do you make of this assessment from the British Medical Journal and where we're at on this this story of kids and vaping?
Yeah, so the article in the BMJ was written from a global perspective, and across the globe, you know, we are seeing that, you know, the same problem in lots of countries as you described it, that vapes are an effective smoking cessation tool, but they've also become really popular with young people. So in the UK, we have actually seen a slight levelling off in our vaping rates among teenagers. So for the last couple of years, we haven't seen the increases that we did see a few years ago, and the government is taking some action to make the products much less appealing to children. So the tobacco and vapes bill that's going through Parliament right at the moment, in fact this afternoon, will give the government powers to stop these smoking. So it's definitely not something that we want children to be using. Whether it's a gateway to smoking is a bit more kind of complex to try and kind of wrap our heads around. We certainly know that children who vape also smoke at much higher levels, but we don't necessarily know that one is causing the other. There's theories around the children that vape may be children that are more inclined to take risks, you know, and may have been smoking anyway. They also are much more likely to use drugs and use alcohol as well. So there's kind of quite a complex picture around risk-taking behaviour, which we know has always been something that, you know, the teenagers do.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, I remember asking my mate's daughter, who was 16 and a vapor, and I said to her, have you ever smoked? And I might as well have asked her if she'd ever killed a dog. You know, she was so mortified by the question. Has she ever smoked? It was almost like a completely separate thing in her head. It didn't equate that this was anything to do with smoking.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting trend, because when we look at adults who are vaping, the vast majority of them will be ex-smokers, so people who've successfully used vapes to stop smoking, which is a really good thing, because although vapes are not risk-free, they're much less harmful than smoking. But the reverse is true when we look at the data on children vaping. Most of them, you know, haven't smoked, and you know, it's not a good thing. But the good news story in all of this is that children are not smoking. You know, we're seeing much lower levels of children smoking than we ever have, which is good. There is
obviously some issues around specific types of vape, as I understand it, and the flavourings. I know there's been some investigation into that, you know, smoking one type of vape could be different to smoking some of the more varied flavours, which may contain other things.
Well, at the moment, there's no regulation, you know, on the flavours, and that involves both flavour composition, so the ingredients, but also how they're described. And I think that's the really kind of pernicious issue at the moment. They're called, you know, candy floss bubblegum, or, you know, raspberry surprise, and these are things that make them look like they're products for children. You know, it's no wonder children want to try them.
Indeed. Caroline, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Caroline Cherney, Deputy Chief Executive for the Action on Smoking and Health, ASH. Thank you to them. There used to be a group called Forest. Do they still exist? The Freedom Organisation for the Right to Enjoy Smoking and Tobacco. I think that's what it stood for. That's a hard sell if you're running that place these days, I'd imagine. But I remember interviewing them loads of times. This comes from Keith in Shrewsbury. No way should we push for a general election yet, purely because Reform don't have enough potential MPs and will just be stuck with either the Tories again or a hung parliament. I did think about that if they said, if Keir Starmer in theory just went, there's a general election going to take place in January, I mean, lots of political parties would be stuffed. Reform would have a very big mountain to climb in terms of trying to find enough people in that. But they kind of probably would still do it, and many people would be voting for people perhaps slightly untested in the sense that they weren't... But again, who is familiar with their local candidate before an election? We had a Lib Dem guy knock on our door at the weekend. I'd forgotten about that. And he was about my other half somehow engaged in conversation with him. And I kept shouting, come away from him! Come away from him! He is dangerous! And, you know, he was looking across his shoulder. I said, quick, move! It's a Liberal Democrat! He's in our garden! And the kids were crying and the dog kind of faked being dead and all sorts of the fish began to turn upside down and float on the top. And he just stood there talking about, well, what I would do is actually do more on the roads and the potholes. And no, nothing's been done so far, as you can probably see. And all of this was going on, and he was doing this while sitting on a space hopper. And I thought, this man is an absolute nut job. And then he, you know, started to run around naked in our garden. In the end, I had to get the hose pipe out to get rid of him. But that's what happens when a Lib Dem knocks on your door. Now, I don't know who this guy was, but perhaps at the next election he will be the local Lib Dem candidate for the Lib Dems in my neck of the woods. But, you know, unless he knocked on the door, you wouldn't have known him. So I suppose... if Reform, my point being, if Reform had to cobble together 500 representatives, then I don't think people's prime concern will be, well, I've never heard of him, because you've probably never heard of half the candidates that stand when there's a general election, even if they were selected to do so some time before. Bob's in Ludlow. What have you got for us, Bob? Good afternoon to you.
Well, you can certainly spin a good story, can't you, Ian?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was a bad day, and we didn't talk for 2 days after that.
Yeah.
He left a questionnaire as well.
What did you put? None of the above.
Because the funny thing is, like, when he came round, I thought, is there some kind of election that I've missed? What's happening? And I thought, you know, doing this for a living, I'm usually sort of across that. I think I'd know if there was one. But he was just doing a kind of PR visit, which, in fairness, joking apart, Bob, I mean, you know, that's dedication, right? He's probably not getting paid for it.
Well, it is, and I think that's sadly lacking in today's politics, in all honesty, because...
100%.
I mean, just going off topic of what I actually found about, I can't remember. We've lived in this village for nigh on 30 years now, and I can't remember the last time anybody from any political party knocked on our door.
Isn't that sad? You literally can't remember when any of them knocked on the door.
No, I mean...
And there's me, with me recently as last Saturday.
Yeah, if I was to have a guess, I would say it was at least sort of 15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah. I can remember, Bob, when I lived in Ashford, Damien Green, who obviously went on to become the Deputy Prime Minister, I remember looking out the window, this was a general election, and looking out the window and seeing him walk down the road, and I ran out because he hadn't knocked on my door, and his people were there, and I said, can he come to my house? I'd like to have a chat with him about his position on Europe. He's a very pro-European guy. This is obviously before Brexit and stuff. And they went, well, if he's got time. And I thought, well, that's not very good. And eventually he did come to the door, and I think he sort of regretted it ever. And I've since got to know him a little bit, because I kept him there for about 15 minutes. I had so many questions for the bloke, and I bet he thought, oh, this isn't meant to happen. It's like, well, it should happen, shouldn't it? That's the whole point.
It certainly should.
But he was in such a safe seat, you know, he didn't really care. No. It's now Labour, by the way, but there you go.
The reason I rang is I think it's time we had a law in this country that basically made it a criminal offence for any politician, regardless of where they serve, to lie, basically, full stop, about anything political. And I think there should be one caveat to it, and that is in the interest of national security.
Yeah.
But I think that when that question comes up for review, as in basically the relevant minister or whomever that claimed national security, once that incident has passed, then I think that question should then be reviewed in the House, and that minister should have to have a damn good excuse for using national security for that particular question.
That's a very good point. And I suppose the difficulty is, when it comes to nuances, what is lying and what is... what is a different version of events to someone else?
I don't think there should be any nuances allowed. It's quite simple. I mean, you look at Lammy last week, 5 times he was asked the same question, 5 times he lied by omission. If he'd turned around and said, I can't answer that on the basis of it affects national security at the present time, that would have been the end of it. And then it could be retested later on once the incident was over and done with.
Yeah, and he could have literally said, if the right honourable gentleman, whatever it was, would bear with me for a day because is more information I need to get and I can give you a fuller answer, or something like that. But, instead of that, you get this kind of swerving and ducking and diving thing, this terrible game, and it looks awful.
Well, it does, because at the end of the day, it makes them look so pathetic, in all honesty.
Yeah.
They don't have any kind of statesman calibre anymore, and we haven't had that since Margaret Thatcher, in all honesty.
Bob, great call, as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to speak. Bob in Ludlow. I want to get a word in from... I'm going to bring some breaking news that the Telegraph are reporting in just a second. Craig's in Bedworth. Craig, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you. Vaping.
Hi, Ian. Well, I own 2 vape shops. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I own 2 vape shops. We've been in business for over a dozen years. We have a Challenge 25 policy in place. We were doing that before we became regulated in 2014.
Gotcha.
It's a nicotine product. Wouldn't want to sell that to anybody's kids.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want anybody selling it to mine. The problem we've got at the minute is that all of these disposable vapes, and anybody who thinks that we've got rid of disposable vapes from the industry is in cuckoo land, because the government have touched it and made it worse. The problem we've got is they're freely available in corner stores, and corner stores are not doing their Challenge 25. They're not checking ages. They don't care about the ages. They work on a much smaller margin, and they don't care who they sell it to. We've got laws in place that could penalise these people, yet there's nobody there to enforce these laws behind it, because trading standards don't have enough people. And every time this comes up in the forefront of the news, which is why I'm so incensed and calling today, is that it gets pushed back into Parliament and they tighten this bit of the law, they tweak that bit of the law, and the only people that gets penalised are the people like me who have put tens of thousands of hours in over the last dozen years to make sure that the product we sell is from the UK, that it's regulated, that it's tested, and all the rest of that goes with that, the hours and the investment that goes with that. And these guys are in their corner stores selling to kids. And we did a study last year. I took my 16-year-old, who's quite a big lad for 16. We took him to 25 vape shops. We took him to 25 corner stores. Every single corner store served him. Every single vape shop.
How old?
We did it at random. He's 16.
16. So he should never have been served this.
No, he should never have been served. But I sent him into 25 different corner stores. And the way we did it, we went into Google, vape shop near me.
Yeah.
Corner store near me.
Gotcha.
Vape shop near me. And
what is the age? Or is the age 16 or is it 18?
It's 18.
Okay.
It's 18, but if you're going to do this properly, you do what we do, and you do what trading standards recommend.
Yeah.
You have a Challenge 25 policy in place. Have 2 massive red signs on the doorway approaching to both of my stores that say Challenge 25. Have your ID ready.
Yep.
No ID, no sale, no exceptions.
Like it. Craig, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, sensible stuff without all the layers of bureaucracy. We are living in a free world where if adults want to vape, they can vape, for goodness sake. So this news from the Telegraph. This is the Telegraph reporting. They've been doing some pretty diligent stuff over there of late with the BBC and other areas. This is why you need good political journalists on the case, because they can fish this kind of stuff out. They are saying, the Telegraph, Morgan McSweeney, that's the most senior aide to the Prime Minister, signed off briefings about a Labour leadership challenge that backfired and caused a row over a toxic culture at Number 10. The Telegraph understands that Sir Keir's Chief of Staff, as well as senior Downing Street communication figures, agreed to brief journalists that the Prime Minister would fight any challenge to his position and that ousting him could undermine the economy. But Mr McSweeney is understood to be insistent that neither he nor Number 10 staff briefed specifically against West Street in the Health Secretary and Sir Keir Starmer's supposed challenger. Well, does that mean they didn't say it, but they did say it? They kind of like, oh, you know, they were only really talking about one person. But if McSweeney signed off these briefings, I mean, this is literally of their own. It's like the BBC over there at Downing Street. All the malarkey going on at the BBC right now is of their own making. This kind of self-inflicted, always end up, you know, that kind of thinking. You always end up exploding somewhere, and that's what's kind of happened here. This is a self-inflicted wound. Or is it a little bit more than that? What is the significance? 0344 499 1000. More comment from you on the way. We've got the voice of doom. I think it's day 3. Day 4 even. I told you this was a stinker. Day 4. Will anybody ever get it? Find out next on Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. One here, I cannot understand why politicians who've been sitting opposite the Tories for the last 8 years have not been split into groups to oversee the different departments such as health, prisons, home office, etc. So when they get the chance, they have teams of experts who've been studying them, in effect meaning they can hit the ground running and not sit around for 18 months doing absolutely nothing like these idiots have been doing. It's a very good point. Wes Streeting was apparently the bloke that did do a lot of that, and I'll tell you who else did as well in opposition. So you've got to go way back. Michael Gove was ready to pounce on education from day one. Now, you might not have liked what he did, but he had an idea of where it needed to go. We'll talk to Mark in just a second. Let's do the voice of doom. This is day 4. It's the mystery voice, but it's political. Here's the voice.
Rightly and properly.
I genuinely believe that is near on impossible, but there's always some diligent swine out there that goes and gets it somehow. Yeah, we're on to you. Have another listen.
Rightly and properly.
If you think you know, 87222. Politician, dead or alive, young, old, left-wing, right-wing, can't tell you which, but you are looking for a politico of some kind. Here it is again.
Rightly and properly.
I mean, it's so short and I think quite generic as a kind of an old politician. Or it could be a young politician who sounds older. It could be a female that sounds like a man. Who knows? We live in very diverse times, kids. 87222. If somebody gets the right answer, we tell you after the news. If they don't, it rolls over. Here it is one more time.
Rightly and properly.
Who's saying rightly and properly?
Rightly and properly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all right. Your work here is done, sir. This is not you, Sam. Him. This is Mark in Manchester. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. What's happening?
Good. Well, just a thought really about the Prime Minister and his predicament. I mean, we've had Theresa May, Liz Truss, bungling Boris, we've had Rishi Sunak, we've now got Keir, various different flavours, characters, boring, effervescent, various different degrees. Maybe if you start thinking outside the box, maybe this job is just impossible. Maybe that democracy just doesn't deliver what we need in the 21st century. That's my point. I mean, if you look at democracy and what it's delivered, this very sort of soft decline, I mean, it's evidenced by this 2.5 trillion pounds worth of debt that just keeps going up and up. Yeah. I mean, they talk about a black hole, but I mean, 2.9 trillion pounds. I mean, that's a super massive.
It's quite a lot of money.
Got to pay back.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they can get. I mean, if a very large majority like the Labour have got can't even reduce the PIP, and they're talking about now in the next budget that they might remove the 2-child cap.
Yep.
Then to me, all democracy is delivering there is you've just got to overpromise as many people as you possibly can in order to get in, and then the real problems are never going to be sorted out. Because if you really talked about the real problems, I think Nigel Farage is going to come up against this. Democracy is just full of people who won't allow change, because if you look at the current political environment, everyone wants to vote for change. Mr. and Mrs. Change are the most popular.
Yeah.
But I just don't think democracy can deliver that. I mean, the Americans have somehow done it. You can tell they've done it because people are out on the street.
Yeah. But how is that got a shelf life? I don't know, because it feels like, people who don't like Donald Trump pathologically hate Donald Trump, and, his star isn't rising all over the United States. I think that's fair to say, but that's democracy for you. But it does feel like they've done something that would invoke some level of change. Listen, I've got to move, Mark, because the news is upon us. Thank you very much indeed for that. I often wonder with these conversations as well, and Mark raises a really good point. If you don't engage in politics, you don't listen to programmes like this or, read the various articles and opinion pieces, if you don't follow any of that, is life just tick along nicely? Is everything tickety-boo? I do wonder. Coming up after the news, the voice of doom. Who is this?
Rightly and properly.
87222 if you think you know. Right now, let's get the latest news headlines. The time on Talk is 3 o'clock.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back to the home of common sense. We're talking about Keir Starmer, of course. He's being urged to sack his chief of staff, a fellow called Morgan McSweeney. It sounds like a Dickens character, but he's very real. This is after hostile number 10 briefings about Wes Streeting briefs alleged a plot to oust Starmer, but Streeting has denied it and says he's staying loyal to the Prime Minister. And now we had that release from the Telegraph a little while ago, which suggested that Mr McSweeney signed off these briefings. And where does this thing end? It'll probably blow over. And I know it's a bit of a Westminster Village story, but actually the implications of this are far bigger, especially with all the nonsense that he's got going on at the moment. And a safeguarding review into the death of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif has found that neighbours feared being branded racist if they raised concerns. I mean, this is horrific on every single level, about as bad as anything you can think of. It also reveals that a council worker went to the wrong address 2 days before she died. Did they not try to find the right address? And that custody was granted, and here's the real kicker in all of this, to her father in 2019, despite previous abuse allegations against him. How did they get this so wrong? And on a lighter note, Sean Keach, who's the science and technology correspondent over there at The Sun, will join us for our weekly tech roundup this week, looking at the amount of people being scammed by dodgy streaming services, Google's warning over public internet use, and supersonic flights that are just around the corner, potentially. Joins us in around 25 minutes' time. Stand by for all of that. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom answer, hopefully, if we've got a right answer, on its way. Now, Republicans in the States are planning a mass rebellion against President Trump in a vote to release the Epstein files, with at least 100 expected to defy him in the House. This comes after a selection of emails were released yesterday, one of which alleged Mr. Trump spent hours at Epstein's house with a victim of sex trafficking. Let's get a word from Michael Yaki, US political analyst, former senior advisor to Nancy Pelosi. Michael, good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you, Ian. Good to see you.
This is a really mysterious story, isn't it? For many, many reasons, not least the underlying point of the story, which is just disturbing. But of course, the president was very unequivocal before the election. I will release these files. And then we were told, well, they were sitting on somebody's desk somewhere. And then somebody said, well, they don't actually exist. It's not like there's a file with all these names. What's the reality, firstly, of that bit?
The reality is that there are many, many files. The question is, the definition of file has been changing to what was on someone's desk, what was in all the files, what was in someone's file folder. This is something that early on, the president was very clear. I had nothing to do with this. I stopped associating with this guy. Didn't know anything that was going on. And basically, there's this kind of death of a thousand cuts going on right now in terms of how these little things going on. The most interesting, I'm not going to say damning, but the most interesting is, of course, the email about spending hours with blank at his house, and what does that mean? Who was that person? And it's, I don't know. I've always thought that this was something that it was interesting. This is something that the hard right, the MAGA, wanted released, and the president was on board with all that. Now it's like, maybe not so much.
And it's interesting because and obviously the White House press secretary was naming names yesterday at the conference, and news over here has as well. But I guess with Trump, it's because there's many strands to this story. It isn't just a case of, were you guilty of abusing somebody? Because that isn't the suggestion with Trump here. Virginia Giuffre in her book, I think, even made that point, and had previously made that point before her death. But it's whether you knew, isn't it? That's also crucial. If you knew something was going on and said nothing.
Exactly. And there's a couple emails, again, without context, you just don't know what they mean. but they talk about the fact that he knew what was going on, quote unquote. Ghislaine told us so. All this kind of stuff that you just don't know. But yes, what did he know and when did he know it? In other words, the famous words from Watergate, the cover-up is worse than the crime. And so the question is, was there really a cover-up? Is there a cover-up? It's not a good look when you say, I'm going to release everything, and then you decide I'm not going to release anything. And then you make it a partisan issue, as in, oh, this is just Democratic thing, when it actually was your party that was pounding to get this stuff out. And you can see
100%. I mean, there's no denying that. There's no way that he can row back from that. I mean, he literally said on multiple occasions, I will be the person that releases those files. Now, you might think, did he just say that because that's in the style of Donald Trump? I'll say it and I'll deal with the fallout later. Because he would have known that whilst he would be confident that he wasn't going to be accused of abuse, but that secondary point that we just discussed, he would also known that it would have come out that he must have been aware of what Epstein was like way after this idea that he cut ties with him.
Yeah, and again, there are inconsistencies, and you see this thing where in one Epstein email, he says he cut me out of the club. I was never a member of the club. He knew what Ghislaine was doing. I mean, what was the thing that he knew Ghislaine was doing? We knew that Maxwell was recruiting women all the time for Epstein. Did Trump know that the masseuses at Mar-a-Lago were being recruited, not just for being masseuses? And that's actually where all this is going. And the fact that it's underlying all this is a terrible crime. Underlying all this is the fact that there are just very mysterious circumstances behind how Epstein died. And then you really should not, I mean, if you're going to try and make this not an issue, you don't take a person who's been convicted of criminal trafficking of women and decide, you know what, instead of putting her in that hard prison, we're going to put her in the softest prison we can find. Coincidentally, after she had spoken to his personal lawyer and then said on the record, well, I don't know anything about Donald Trump. I mean,
maybe that was just a unique coincidence, Michael, that she was moved into what looks more like a kind of looks like Mar-a-Lago more than it looks like a prison. But that's another story, I guess. And again, when Trump was friends with Epstein, he wasn't a trainee priest. He was a businessman, a hard businessman with a good view on instinct. He liked to party. He was on the money when it came to, knowing what was what and who was who to trust. I mean, the idea that Trump wouldn't have looked at somebody like Epstein, particularly when it turns out, according to this, he was in the same room as one of the victims. I mean, of course he would have known what was going on. Of course he would have known something.
I mean, there was a whole attitude and sort of swinging era going on around that time. You remember Donald Trump emerging from the limousine for some Playboy TV special?
Yeah.
I mean, not on broadcast TV, but that kind of thing going on. So there was certainly a sort of an old boys thing going on with Epstein. The question is, did he know how young and what kind of women Epstein liked? And it's kind of hard to think, well, if you're around someone all that much, and especially given how much Epstein was doing at the time with Maxwell, it defies a little bit of belief. Maybe you can willingly decide not to look at something going on, but the fact is, certainly the actions that the president has taken are not the actions of someone who doesn't mind that everything should come out. You just don't start stonewalling and doing all the things that they're doing right now. Even calling in some members of Congress late yesterday to try and pressure them not to vote for this, what's called a discharge petition in the Congress today.
Indeed, and of course it should be said, Mr. Trump isn't the only person that's referenced in these latest sort of releases, and over the years we know that lots of famous people, former presidents as well, Clinton knew Epstein, and again, did he know anything? No suggestion that he was involved in anything illegal, but it's did he know? And of course the royal, formerly known as Prince, as also a guy. We never get tired of that gag, Michael. He's also mentioned in this latest drop.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets worse and worse for the Andrew formerly known as a royal, and it goes to show that I believe that the king made the right decision, because this is just getting worse by the moment.
100%. I mean, his kind of lying was off the scale, really. I mean, he gave, as you know, TV interviews saying, no, I never even met this person. It was, well, literally, here's a photograph of it, mate, with the person. And, it's very hard to believe that he has no memory of somebody that apparently he met 3 times in that context. But perhaps we will never know until, I don't know, will the president finally release everything, do you think, Michael? I mean, is that still a possibility?
It is a very, I think, again, the question is, what is all? The definition will keep on shifting, and it will continue to shift as long as it appears to be one where he seems to be compliant, but holds back on as much as he possibly can. But again, why? I mean, and that's the hard question that he has to justify to the Republicans in Congress, to the folks out there in just the American public who now can look at something other than whether or not their flight's been canceled. So this is sort of like, oh, great, now I can look at something more interesting. Oh, yeah, this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing is coming back again.
Yeah.
And what is the president doing now to prevent information from coming out?
And it's interesting, I mentioned about 100 Republicans expected to defy Mr. Trump on this. So this isn't just a kind of partisan thing.
No, these are all people who pledged to do it when it was sort of the thing to do. I don't know how many of them actually thought this was going to happen, or that was going to happen with a Republican president. But kudos to them that they're sticking to their guns, and even despite very heavy pressure from the White House to not vote for that petition. But
yeah. But these are people that told those who voted for them, this is what I will do and this is what I believe. So fair play for those guys sticking by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, I mean, I don't know whether you'd fire her or hire her, because I think, she's either absolutely brilliant at being able to spin with a straight face and toe the line in a way that, very few people can, or she's cut from a very curious cloth. I don't know what to make of her, but, in fairness, if you want someone batting for you, that's who you're going to have, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, to me, there's a significant issue of trust and credibility that the American people do care about, and what they don't want to see as a press secretary is essentially the same kind of chatbot you see when you go into some customer service doom loop, where they just keep on asking you the same questions, repeating the same things to you again. And you're going, no, that's not the question I asked. And it's like, here, you have 3 choices. These are the choices I'm giving you. And that's essentially what she's doing. Now, is she good at it? Absolutely. But what does it mean in terms of ultimately the American people? Well, I think, she did that all during the shutdown. She did that before the shutdown. The American people are not buying, or have not seemed to be buying it. The president's popularity is at an all-time low. So, she's doing what the president wants, and to that extent, what more could you ask of someone?
Well, that's very true. Yeah, I guess that is that's on the paycheck, isn't it? And that's the title of the job, and she does it. Michael, great to have you on, sir. We will speak again, I hope. Michael Yaki, US political analyst and former senior advisor to Nancy Pelosi. Your thoughts on that? It is curious. Had Trump not said, I'll release all this stuff, we wouldn't quite be having this conversation. I mean, what other analysis could there be? And I'll ask this to, look, we've been talking a lot in the last hour, how we live in sort of strange times politically. We now live in an era where people in this country are almost as invested in Donald Trump or disinvested in Donald Trump as if he was their president. I mean, I've never seen or experienced that kind of narrative before, where he's referred to and cited and respected, worshipped even, in a way, as if he was, and criticised equally in a similar kind of way. And if you do criticise Trump, somebody comes at you like a Brit comes at you like you're criticising their dad, and you think, Really? He's not even your president. He's a foreign country's leader. I mean, I hope we can have very robust opinions of our own. We could have particularly robust ones about someone else's. But surely we could all agree it's a bit weird that Donald Trump said, I'm going to release this stuff, and then doesn't. And it's a bit, would stretch anyone's imagination to think that Donald Trump didn't know what Epstein was up to. So it doesn't mean that Donald Trump is Prince Andrew, although he denies everything, was accused of having sex with a girl who was underage by American law, but she was still only 17, I think. And some would say that that is a, you know, perhaps a power dynamic gone, you know, in a very distasteful direction. But Trump isn't accused of that. The accusation as it stands seems to be, but you knew this guy was a wrong-'un back then and did nothing. I think that's the broad brush of what has angered people. I'd love your response on that. If you love Donald Trump, how would you respond to what is being suggested about him? Nick is down in London. Nick, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hello, Ed.
Hi.
Can I make first a small point about Trump?
Yeah.
It isn't what I was phoning about.
Okay.
But did Trump know Epstein was wrong? Well, yeah, I expect so. But the circles Donald Trump moved in, he'd meet good uns, wrong uns, halfway house wrong uns. He'd meet all kinds of people and have to meet all kinds of people. So we shouldn't be too shocked.
No, I think that's 100% true. And I was thinking of, you know, somebody raised the sort of Jimmy Savile, all those people that worked at the BBC with Jimmy Savile, you know, not everybody knew. People would go, oh, Jimmy, yeah, he loves the girls. That's as far as it would go. No, nobody at the time was aware of the enormity of what Jimmy Savile was up to. And I don't say that as a defence of anybody, but because it sounds remarkable to say that now when you look at what subsequently happened. And I think you're right, Nick, actually. I think that is probably the best answer that you've said. At that time, you know, Trump knew everyone. He was knocking around with all sorts of people. I don't imagine he spent every weekend over at Jeffrey's house. So, you know, yeah, I think that's a good answer, actually. Anyway, you were going to talk about Labour.
Yes, and Keir Starmer. A couple of hours back, you said the trouble with Keir Starmer is that he appears to have no core values, beliefs. He's got no political philosophy, and I think you're right on that. And you played a clip by Ed Miliband saying when things go wrong, the thing which they will, what you as a politician should do is step back into your core values and standards. And it occurred to me, if that wasn't Ed talking without thinking, it could easily be Ed Miliband firing a gun at Keir Starmer, because Ed Miliband's name's been bandied around. If and when the PM's job come up, the Labour leader stands down.
Yeah.
So I wondered whether that was rather a barbed compliment to a barbed statement.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite possible, isn't it?
So I did wonder. I do take the point, though, if Keir Starmer goes, who else is there? I mean, it's a pretty shallow pool.
Yeah.
They've got.
You mean within the Labour Party? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all parties, really.
But could it only be if they were looking, and this would be the same, they would commit the same error as a party if they did it, but isn't Wes Streeting the only person?
I think the pressure within the party to not have a white male as leader would be irresistible.
Yeah, true.
I think it will be female.
But they've never gone there. A few stood in. Margaret Beckett stood in. Harriet Harman stood in. But no one's ever done the big job.
And the other thing, which would make it, assuming Keir goes, Starmer goes, that'll mean that the UK will have had 5 different prime ministers in 5 years.
Yeah.
Johnson,
May,
Liz Truss.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, we're getting Italian level.
I was about to say, that used to be the gag about Italy, didn't it? And they've sort of stabilised themselves with a bit of common sense. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick, down in London. Here's an interesting one. Ian says, have you noticed how Wes Streeting seems to be Labour's answer to Robert Jenrick? Both young, Oxbridge, but streetwise, natural media stars with a jokey turn of phrase and that rare thing, charismatic. When I first saw that, I thought, What's Ian talking about? Robert Jenrick's twice the age of Wes Streeting, surely. In my head, Robert Jenrick's about 50 and Wes Streeting's about 25. No, Wes is 42 and Jenrick, I think, is 43. So they are, yeah, I would never, ever have put those two guys at the same age. But Ian, you're absolutely bang on. And being more accessible on the airwaves, I know that shouldn't be the only criteria for being Prime Minister. It maybe shouldn't even be in the top 3. It's helpful. But whether people like it or not, it is now part and parcel of it. And Streeting gave a load of interviews yesterday, and he was citing celebrity traitors and doing some sort of gags about faithfuls and traitor and all the rest of it. And it just sounded a bit more accessible. You'd never hear Starmer go down that line. You could never imagine Kemi Badenoch. If somebody, do you remember when somebody said to Jeremy, showed him a picture of Ant and Dec and he didn't know who they were? And of course that's not the criteria for being Prime Minister. In a way, I don't care if our Prime Minister knows who Ant and Dec are. But there's another party who thinks, well, you should be kind of across a bit of popular culture, shouldn't you? You know, what's your favourite band? Oh, Bon Jovi. Oh, really? Okay, yeah. What's your favourite album? Greatest hits. It's that answer. It's that problem. Are we doing the voice of doom here? Let's do the voice of doom quickly, because we might have a winner here, all right? Here's the voice. Have a listen.
Rightly and properly.
Who's that? That was the question we asked about half an hour ago. Some of the answers we got: Jacob Rees-Mogg, Alice Douglas-Hume, Nick Rainsford, Norman St John Stevens, comes up every day, that one. Andy Burnham, Peter Carrington, Neil Parrish, Roy Jenkins, Chris Patton. No. On all of those, we have not got a right answer. It means it rolls over to tomorrow. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Stephen East Yorkshire says, just a thought, do you think Ed Miliband will, Mad Ed Miliband, will release a Christmas single this year? He does play a mean ukulele. I can actually see him kind of wearing a pair of dungarees playing the banjo, to be honest. This from Nigel, enjoying the show. Is McSweeney's story becoming too big that it has to go all... that he has to go? All that will happen is a released prisoner, national or international emergency occurs, and that becomes the narrative. Hey, presto, problem solved. McSweeney ain't going anywhere anytime soon. I doubt whether he will, to be honest. This is... There's a huge amount of significance in this story. I don't think it will go much further. I sense. You wait, 5 o'clock he'll resign. Andrew's in Hertfordshire on Labour. What have you got for us, Andrew? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, you and I, we predicted this all the way along. He's not going to do... Yeah, the reality of it is the budget will be horrific. So they have to then... Reeves will fall on a sword and be replaced by that chap from the Resolution Foundation, the one that's really terrifying.
Yeah.
And then he will limp on... He will limp on to the local elections, which will be horrific. And then they'll do his legs. And then...
do his legs. I love that phrase.
And he'll look like Norman Hunter's been through the back of him. So what's going to happen is they'll go left, Miliband, and because the vote will be so bad, do you know who they'll turn to and welcome back into the party? Corbyn.
You reckon?
Oh, yeah, because Miliband's father was Corbyn and Ben's hero. They used to go round to that house that Miliband's father stole from the National Trust.
Yeah.
And
well, of course, just for legal clarity, he didn't steal anything. But yeah, you're right. I hear what you're saying. So Corbyn was friends with Miliband's father.
Oh yeah, they're ideologically they used to sit round there with Ben, all obviously fully clothed for legal purposes, and they used to chat about the revolution, and that's what they'll go to the left. They're not
while tugging on a suspicious cigarette. Yeah, I love the image. So you reckon they bring back Corbyn, but you've predicted, Andrew, there'll be a general election.
Yeah, because it'll be so bad. There will be a general election. So after May, they'll have gone to the left. The bond markets will have destroyed the economy.
Yeah.
And they'll have to go to the country.
So you are still dead cert that there will be a general election just shortly after May?
Yeah, there will be. And you and I will go out to lunch on the strength of it. You're never as weak as when you have a huge majority. You can see, and that brilliant caller that spoke, Starmer stands for nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. There's no part of the Labour Party that will stand with him. And, Diane Abbott, for all her positives or negatives, she said he doesn't do politics. He's not a politician.
And that's the problem, isn't it? But then you could argue, a professional politician, does it sometimes, we always talk about needing outside blood. We used to bang on about this a lot, Andrew, when people would go, you need somebody who's not a politician, they need somebody who's from the world of business, like an Alan Sugar character or a Donald Trump. And then, well, lo and behold, America went and did it. They did vote in somebody who's not a politician.
Yeah, and you just answered your own question there. Why did you mention those two people? Because they're leaders. And Starmer...
Well, they're both on The Apprentice, actually.
Yeah, no, but they are leaders, and that's why everybody's looking to Trump, because he acts like a leader. Where the best Starmer is an oily, grotty little North London lawyer on a high street.
On that glowing endorsement, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. But hard to disagree. 0344 499 1000. More from you coming next on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. We'll go back to more of your calls in just a couple of moments. Look who's with us. Sean Keach, Head of Science and Technology at The Sun, is back. Good afternoon to you, Sean.
Hello, Ian. How's it going?
All good. Always great to have you on, and loads to talk about as ever. I mean, and let's start. I think we should talk about... We talked about streaming a little bit last week. This is never really out of the headlines for a number of reasons. The world of sport, of course, has often been centre to illegal streaming, and, you know, it used to often be pubs that got collared showing the football when they weren't meant to do so because they had 500 people in their bar, and that's not quite how it's meant to work. But actually individuals using various sticks and devices are also doing so. And now football fans are warned that they're losing thousands trying to watch these things on the cheap. What's going on?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the time with illegal streaming, we talk about the illegality of it, the fact that, you know, content creators and broadcasters aren't getting the money, which I think probably doesn't go too far with the public, and it should, and it's a shame because we have a brilliant creative industry in the UK. It's one of our best exports, but ultimately some people don't care. So there's this it's almost like a watchdog, a sort of resource called BStreamWise. They've done some research into the amount of money that people are losing from illegal streaming because, you know, as we've talked about before, it's actually there are some pretty significant risks if you are illegal streaming. Now, we've talked about this previously, this Amazon crackdown on dodgy Fire Sticks. They're shutting down these apps. And what we're seeing is a lot of people basically going to try and find alternatives, whether it's other dodgy devices, whether it's websites, whether it's different apps. And basically, BStreamWise is saying that on average, £1,680 is stolen when money is stolen, whether it's through fraud or whether it's through, you know, a crook installing malware on your devices, on your systems. And there's a pretty significant sum of money. And they're basically trying to point out that, you know, maybe you're only saving, say, you know, 13, 14 quid a month. I mean, the risk of you losing much more is so significant. And they're saying they've even seen cases where it's £7,000 or £8,000 that people have lost through fraud. They gave an example of this one guy who had his bank details stolen twice after signing up for an illegal streaming website, and the people tried to even buy a speedboat on his bank account.
Good Lord.
You know, a lot of bank accounts can't bear a speedboat purchase. Mine certainly can't.
So you do wonder whether the streaming device that they're selling, or the app or whatever it is actually a mechanism. It's a front for the theft of the money more than it is for offering, you know, an underhand access to football.
This is actually exactly what it is. And, you know, the police are constantly warning, saying, you know, serious criminals are, you know, operating these sort of dodgy Fire Stick rings. And you're right, you don't know the provenance of the Fire Sticks or the other dodgy devices. You don't know the provenance of the apps that are on it. Often they come with VPNs installed. You don't know who's running those. And then often it's not even just that they're trying to steal your money. Sometimes you get wrapped up into this thing called a botnet, where they basically turn your computer network into a sort of drone for their criminal activities, and they tie you up with thousands of other computers. So, you know, it's far-reaching risks, and it's really, you know, they're saying it's certainly not worth it. So, you know, my advice is always try and rotate your streaming services. If you've got a student in the house, that's great, because often students get discounts on these things. Usually if you try and quit a streaming service, they'll offer you a discount anyway, so it's definitely worth trying that.
Indeed.
And there are plenty of free alternatives out there too, so, you know.
On a similar point, well, it isn't a similar point, but it's just that in terms of, you know, one product being the front-facing thing of an idea, but actually there's something different behind it. Somebody once told me that Tesla is actually a finance company, essentially. It's there to sell finance and make money through money. And the car is just a mechanism to make that happen.
I mean, it's a fair point, and, you know, it certainly is making money. I mean, Elon Musk got his $1 trillion pay package signed off recently, so, you know, maybe there's definitely onto something there.
Maybe there's something in that. Let's talk about Google warning billions of mobile owners their bank accounts are at risk of being emptied by people using free public Wi-Fi. This is a really interesting one.
Yeah, and we all use free public Wi-Fi, but Google's put out this report called Behind the Screens. And actually the report is mostly about text-based scams, but it has this point about public Wi-Fi, and it says, avoid using public Wi-Fi wherever possible, as these networks can be unencrypted and easily exploited by attackers. Now, they're talking about the sort of Wi-Fi networks that when you go to a restaurant or a coffee shop or an airport, or if you're at a train station that pop up. They're saying, you don't necessarily know who's running these networks. Now, if you're somewhere like Heathrow Airport, you're probably quite safe to browse the web. But often when you sign up to these things, you don't know who's running it, and you don't know the sort of provenance of it. So they're saying be very careful, try not to do very important things on it. If you are worried, maybe try using a VPN, which is an app that sort of scrambles what you're doing. It's actually quite a controversial bit of advice, because a lot of security experts say now a lot of websites sort of encrypt your information by default, but sometimes when you're texting, that information won't be encrypted. So it's always worth being mindful. I think probably the bigger risk is actually when criminals set up these fake Wi-Fi networks. So sometimes they'll go to a busy location like a train station, and they'll set up a fake Wi-Fi network that has a similar name to the proper one, and then you log onto that one, and then you end up sort of passing your information to these cyber criminals. So that's probably something that you should more watch out for. The best way to get around that is to just ask a member of staff, is this the legitimate Wi-Fi network? Usually it'll be on a sign somewhere that's saying it. It's definitely worth triple checking before you log on to public Wi-Fi that you're definitely signing on to the proper Wi-Fi and not a criminal's Wi-Fi.
Are we getting any closer to a kind of an all-encompassing Wi-Fi cloud? I know Elon Musk, to go back to Musk, he has his own setup, doesn't he, which you can buy, I think, in this country if you want to. It's a little pricey to have your Wi-Fi through his company. But it just strikes me as, I'm 3G, 4G, 5G, now places onto 6G. Is that going to just disappear in favour of just a massive global Wi-Fi network where we're all connected?
There are a couple of things here. I think certainly we're probably using public Wi-Fi less. I mean, I'm generally finding that most places I have a pretty good connection. Maybe airports, the only example where, or sort of a restaurant out in the countryside. So certainly as like mobile coverage gets broader, you'll find using public Wi-Fi less often. You're right to point out Elon Musk's, it's called Starlink. He's put a load of satellites up in the sky, beaming down internet. I think the only problem with Starlink is that it is a satellite connection. So you need a receiver with a direct line of sight to the sky. So if you're indoors, you can't connect to a satellite. You would need to connect to a receiver, say, on the roof of a building that would then connect to the satellite. So that's probably the only roadblock, which, 5G, 4G doesn't have that problem. It can still reach you indoors. Yeah. But certainly having internet beamed down from space is a brilliant workaround, because you don't need to lay out infrastructure. If you're thinking about reaching very rural places with internet, satellites is a fantastic option. I think we're going to see more of that. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he's also doing a similar thing. They have this it's called Project Cooper, and they're putting loads of satellites into space as well. So
is that not
which is expensive, but
but they're all trillionaires, aren't they? So they don't care. Is that not a flaw in the business plan, that we've developed a Wi-Fi system but you can't use it indoors? I mean, that's quite a big requirement of using Wi-Fi, whether you're at work, at home, wherever you happen to be. I mean, how many people go outdoors to use their phone if you're already indoors?
If you were going to have a Starlink connection, you would put a sort of dish on your roof, and then the satellite would connect to the dish, a bit like Sky TV, and then that would sort of relay the signal into your home. So modern phones also have satellite connectivity now, like the iPhone. You can make emergency calls via satellite, but again, you'd need to be outdoors to do that, which, I mean, usually you would be if you were trying to contact by satellite, because it's supposed to kick in when you don't have phone signal. So you're stuck in the wilderness somewhere. If you have a modern iPhone, you can connect to the satellite, and even if you don't have signal, you can still get in touch with emergency services, which is handy.
It is indeed handy. I was just looking up as you were speaking, and it says that you can buy Starlink mini satellites from high street stores.
Yeah, and it's actually increasingly popular in the UK. I think the vision is that eventually you'll have whole world coverage, and certainly as Amazon starts to get theirs into space too, we'll start to see a bit of a price war. Hopefully prices come down, and we'll have cheap space internet. There's this interesting theory the more of these satellites that we actually put into space, we have this increased risk that they'll start crashing into each other and create a sort of like cascade effect where the debris basically encircles Earth, and then humanity will one day be trapped on Earth because we can't escape this debris field that's been created. So that's something to keep you up at night.
Indeed. And I noticed that you'd still be paying at the moment £75 a month for your Starlink setup, which is way more expensive than you're currently paying for your broadband and the like.
Yeah, not cheap, but you get bragging rights of having space internet, which has some value.
That's very true. Yeah, try that down at the Rose and Crown. Your mates will love it. Free Apple gift inside your iPhone that you'd normally pay for. What's going on here?
So, I don't know if you heard of it. It's a couple of years old now, but it's this service called Apple Fitness Plus.
Yeah.
And it's basically a workout service. It's got something like 4,000 workouts on. They're hosted by professional trainers. It's sort of like a video. You follow along. Sometimes it's, yoga or strength classes or meditation or dancing in front of your telly. Again, you can use it on iPhone, iPad, whatever. It's good fun, and it's a sort of a cheap way of exercising at home. So normally it's about a tenner a month. Which is about 30p a day, so much cheaper than an actual personal trainer. But they've started, I guess, as a way of trying to get people to sign up, they started giving away free classes. So they're doing these basically monthly samples. So there's 5 at the moment that you can do this month. So that's 1 a week. So if you want a free workout, you can get 5 workouts this month for free. Then they'll refresh again next month. So you just go into the fitness app on your iPhone, or you've got an Apple TV or an iPad, load it up, and they should just be there waiting for you. Do a bit of exercise at home, stave off the sort of Christmas pounds that we're all going to put on as we start eating mince pies. I've already had a few, so I need to do my workout. It's good. It's totally free.
It is a very good app, and I've not used it in that sense, but I have looked at it, and it's, you think, wow, this is, somebody's really thought about this. I mean, this is a proper bit of kit, and for those who want to do stuff at home, or it does encourage you to do some outside stuff too, but broadly speaking, and I know some people go, well, you can get all that on YouTube, but it's not all in one place, is it, when you go to YouTube? You've got to start looking around.
And this is quite good. It syncs up with your iPhone, so it will sort of display your metrics as you're exercising on the screen. Yeah. And if you've got an Apple Watch, actually, it will sort of display more detailed metrics like your heart rate and stuff. But, certainly very good. Much cheaper than having an actual personal trainer, of course, 30p a day, who can complain. But if you do have one, it's a nice addition. Get fit for Christmas.
You get fit for Christmas, yeah. If you want to look like this all year round, then that's, you know what to do. And finally, I love this. NASA have got a new jet dubbed the Flying Swordfish. Are we getting into supersonic territory? What's happening?
So we're trying to bring supersonic back. I mean, many of the listeners will remember Concorde quite fondly, obviously sort of doomed in the end. But they're trying to bring it back, and specifically over land, because flying across the sea was never a problem really for supersonic speeds. But the problem with having supersonic flights over land is the sonic boom. And if you imagine, constantly being under a flight path with sonic booms going off all day, it's going to drive you pretty mad. And so generally, sort of airline regulators haven't allowed supersonic flights over land, except for the military. NASA and Lockheed Martin, they're trying to do basically quiet supersonic flights, and they've come up with this sort of concept aircraft called the X-59, and it took off on its maiden voyage the other day, and it basically, they're promising a sonic thump. So basically, when you're on the ground, you would only hear sort of roughly the equivalent of a car door closing, which is obviously a lot quieter than a sonic boom. I don't know if you've ever heard a sonic boom, but they are much louder than a car door closing. And this plane will reach speeds of 925 miles an hour, which is faster than the speed of sound. So it is reaching the speed of sound, but much more quietly. And obviously, that's a lot faster than a regular jet.
Indeed. I've always found it odd, Sean, that, since Concorde went, and you think of the natural evolution of events, whether it's travel and time is of the essence and speed is of the essence, it's curious that in 2025 it takes longer to get somewhere now than it used to. And that isn't a headline you'd imagine we'd have written some years ago, but that's I know it only applied to Concorde really, because the other stuff probably has got faster, but that's the reality, right? I mean, there was something that got you there quicker that no longer exists.
Absolutely, but I think we're going to see that reversing trend. I mean, there's lots of work ongoing beyond the speed of sound. So, they're talking about hypersonic, which is Mach 5, so that's 5 times the speed of sound. There's lots of airlines looking into basically using almost like space travel, so to just dip into the upper atmosphere and then come back down, almost like a rocket ship. To cut down times, but some of that technology is still quite a way away. But certainly this is a working craft that has managed to fly quietly at higher than the speed of sound. So big win for air travel.
Yeah, I'll let you road test it before I do, Sean. That's all I'm going to say. But listen, look forward to the report and the review on that. Sean Keach, great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Sean. Head of Science at The Sun and Technology. Thank you to him. Lots more to get through. I'll take some more calls before the news as well. Peter Cargwell's going to be here at 4 o'clock and he'll nip in to give us the lowdown as to what's going on the big drive show this afternoon. 10 to 4 now. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 524. This will be Ian down in London. Back to Labour. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi.
I spoke to you about, well, I speak to you fairly often, but I spoke to you last year and I said to you that the only way out of trouble for this country is going to be some sort of thing like a coalition government. And it'll be proportional representation because, quite simply, you've got the far left, which are useless, the far right, which won't be any good to the main sort of stream, and it'll have to be vote, that it all is done by proportion. Because, as you said, we are become the laughing stock of Europe. But all of the countries, all of mainland Europe are becoming that way. The only reason America's getting away with it is because there is actually only two parties, either the Republican or the Democrats, and that's it.
Yeah.
And because quite simply, you've got the two extremes are just a joke. And if you think like that, as we said, Labour only got in because Conservatives, everybody just didn't want to vote for them because they were so.
Yeah. I mean, I still find it slightly mysterious that even if you didn't want to vote Tory, you decided to vote for Keir Starmer. But that's another story. But you're right; they didn't get in, and of course their vote share was not as good as Corbyn's, which is quite interesting. A lot of Labour eyes are on that statistic because a previous caller said they'll get Corbyn back in because they might stand a better chance. I can't imagine it, but who would or how would you form this coalition, though, Ian? I mean, who'd be in it, just briefly?
Well, if you were going to go down it, the coalition at the moment would be it's going to have to be something like the Conservatives and Reform get together, and on the other side it would be the Liberal Democrats, Labour, and the Green Party. So it'll be just purely left against right.
Yeah, is that a good thing?
No, because quite simply, you can see what a mess that we've got at the moment with the Labour. Because as everybody says, and a guy I used to work for used to say, if you're in business, to start with, Labour will be fantastic because they spend. But at the end of the day, they leave the note in the drawer, we've got no money left, right? And that's it. So it'd have to be possibly towards the right side. But as I said to you before once, that I just can't see it with Reform. Where are they going to get 650-odd people to sort of be an MP? They can't even do it in Kent, from what I've understood.
Yeah, and these people have got to give up their jobs when, and all the rest. I mean, it's a huge issue. I get it. Ian, thank you on that profound note of where we are headed. Thank you to Ian down in London. Paul says, Ed Miliband, somebody mentioned Ed Miliband releasing a Christmas song. And Paul says it should be the old 60s hit, The Windmills of Your Mind. Maybe that's a good start. I didn't understand that at first. And then I thought, the windmill.
The windmills of
the
your
windmills.
Mind. Yeah,
it's the windmills.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious, really. I don't know why.
He'll be getting net zero for Christmas from me, I can tell you.
Oh, stop it.
Off the Christmas card list.
What's going on, Peter?
Well, I don't know about you, but this nonsense in Labour and what's going on, it seems like a Westminster Village story, but it also says to me, actually, can these guys run a government? Can they do things that they want to do? We've got a doctor strike coming up.
Yep.
We've got 2 weeks' time, less than 2 weeks, we've got the budget, which is going to affect every single person in this country. I don't know about you, but I wanted a bit of stability. Keir Starmer promised me boring government. We're not getting it. We're getting quite interesting government, probably to nerds like me because of all the briefing and all the rest of it. The other story, the main story I must say, that is just absolutely making me incandescent today is the Sarah Sharif story. It's so many chances to prevent murder, and racial sensitivities should have had nothing to do with it.
How many times do we have to be here with these kind of stories? Oh, the social workers also didn't want to say anything, or the teacher, and they didn't want to say anything, and the doctor, was suspicious but didn't want to say anything. Not necessarily just always down to racial issues, but for a variety.
Yeah, some of the detail, I was reading it today. I mean, we actually can't give you some of the detail this time,
I'd say
at the time of the day.
It is
because it's so distressing. Also, Labour scrapping police and crime commissioners. I mean, they're scrapping them